All right, people, welcome back. We are here with another episode of the official Talkin' TV podcast after we took a break last week. And the next installment of what I've liked to been calling this summer, which is blockbuster TV summer. We've been recapping The Boys and House of the Dragon up until this point, where we're adding another installment to cap off the month of June, that being season 3 of The Bear, which dropped all 10 of its episodes this past Wednesday night. I just finished it. I believe Luke just finished it as well. Man, chef, you ready to chef away?
It is definitely time to cook.
Yes, indeed. All of that.
Unlike The Acolyte, which I have not been watching.
Oh, we'll be saving our ribbing for The Acolyte later on in this episode. What's it called? For those of you also who are tuning into the audio feed of this as well, the recaps of House of the Dragon and The Boys will premiere right after this. All of this and more on today's episode of the Talkin' TV podcast. What's going on, guys? Happy Sunday morning. Back in the Sunday morning slot just for today. More than likely, we'll see if we actually keep this for the rest of the recaps, at least until the recaps are done in early August. But Luke, I know you're not as big of a TV watcher as me, but it's been a rough year. Well, I mean, it's been a rough year for everything, really. But, to the point where Hollywood is questioning its own existence even more than before. But it's been a rough year for TV, to say the least, after everything ended last year. And we've gotten a couple good installments, Shogun 3 Body Problem. X-Men 97 was a very, very big surprise. We got the last 4 episodes of Invincible, which were pretty great. But yeah, so we found ourselves in this weird spot. Specifically, it feels like just for this month. I know I've said blockbuster TV summer, but it really has been for a majority of June because a lot of these shows are only going to be around for like another couple of weeks or so, where we had the return of The Boys, House of the Dragon this past month. We had the premiere of The Acolyte, the latest Star Wars show, which you and I talked about for all of 5 minutes at the beginning of the month while it was still relevant. It's only gotten, unfortunately, more relevant. I don't necessarily know if for the reasons that it deserves, but we also have the return of The Bear, which has been around for the shortest amount of time, shorter than any of these shows. I believe it premiered only like 2 months before House of the Dragon. But unlike House of the Dragon, which is only now returned for its second season 2 years after its premiere, The Bear has been kind of satisfying us in terms of actually, being the TV that we used to love, which is, actually releasing a new season every year. And so this show really has turned into the little show that could, in terms of it kind of came out of nowhere in the summer of 2022, dropped all 8 of its episodes, starring Jeremy Allen White, who was famous for years for his portrayal of Lip Gallagher on Shameless. It's kind of the younger, cocky bad boy. And now this show comes along and kind of shows he's a little bit older. He's a little bit of an adult. And what were your expectations going into this show when you first heard about it, when it first premiered?
There, I fixed my mic input from before. I don't think I watched it when it first came out. New show wasn't that popular. Like I heard about it. Maybe I even watched the first episode, but it wasn't until season 2 came around that I actually fully watched it. I watched it, and then I enjoyed it. But then season 2 was like a big step up. So then when season 3 was coming out, I was eagerly anticipating it, and it lived up to what I was waiting for. So. Great cast, so many like actors popping up. It's kind of the show, like I feel like actors are really like demanding, like, can I get in this anyhow, like even like for 2 seconds. Like even in the season there's an episode in the middle which we'll talk about. So it's just such an easy show to enjoy. Like
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, so this show was one of those ones where I was looking for like kind of, the upcoming shows, because the summer is usually sometimes when we start to get some premieres of the new show. So after the spring of 2022, where Ozark had wrapped up, Severance had wrapped up, what's it called? We hadn't had Succession for a minute. Barry and Better Call Saul were just wrapping up their runs as well. So I was kind of looking forward to being like, okay, what are we looking forward to for this summer for 2022? When I saw the trailer for the show, I'm like, okay, Jeremy Allen White, I like him. The show looks interesting enough. It looks very fast paced. It looks very intense. I'm like, okay, that's usually a surefire way to my heart. And so, but it was on FX and Hulu. This was right around the time when obviously Fox and its subsidiary FX had been owned by Disney for a couple of years by this point. But this was when the first talks of the Hulu Disney merger were beginning to happen. And so Hulu was still its own thing at the time. Now, of course, it's all on one big happy Disney family. But at the time, Hulu was its own thing. So I'm like, okay, is this like Hulu trying to directly compete with Netflix? Because what's it called? Because yeah, I was not sure whether I was really not sure whether what's it called? I really wasn't sure kind of what their approach was here, what their strategy was. I'm like, are they trying to directly compete with Netflix? Because Hulu had tried this approach before and it really hadn't worked. And for the most part, they were still doing the week to week drops that a lot of streamers were doing. But they chose to drop all 8 episodes in the same day. And I'm like, okay. And I started watching the first episode. I'm like, oh, these are short too. They're only like 30 to, I think the longest one was 40 minutes each. The 7th episode, I think, didn't even make a full 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then just the style of it, I'm like, what is this? I have never seen a show like this. It takes place in the back of a kitchen at like a failing Chicago sandwich shop. Everybody's shouting, everybody's screaming. The editing is so fast paced. It's kind of like the perfect Gen Z show because I'm like, oh my God, the editing is so fast, frantic, and all over the place. It's impossible to lose somebody's attention. And the first season, I would definitely define it chaotically good. It was definitely still trying to find its stride and figure out kind of what its identity was. You know, it had a very, very strong start, but I kind of equated similarly enough to the start of The Boys, where it had a very, very strong identity of what it wanted to be, even if it was still kind of trying to iron out the kinks. I wasn't a fan of a lot of the supporting characters. I really wasn't sure kind of what the approach was, but the acting was good, like really, really good. Like really, really good. Because aside Jeremy Allen White, this is obviously our introduction to Ayo Edebiri, who is now taken over the world. Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who've been acting in things for years. This was finally his big breakout role. And
Cousin,
exactly.
cousin, I'm made of rocks now.
And all the supporting players as well that they got, who are now kind of like, staples of the show. I'm like, that was a good, solid season, but there was a lot of problems with it. It did not make my top 10 of that year. And 2022 was already a pretty loaded year for TV to begin with, unfortunately, as that was kind of the beginning of the end and the wrap up of a ton of shows that, that we kind of been with for the last like 4 or 5 years, And so I finished the first 8 episodes, and then a year later, I'm living in New York City, and the second season drops in the middle of summer of 2023, which, like I said, was one of the greatest content summers of our lives in recent memory. And I started watching it, kind of having like tempered expectations after the first season, and I was like, okay, I was like, this is within the first episode, I was like, okay, this is going to be something cool. They fixed the problems that I've had with the first season, and this is going to be something really cool and really interesting and really introspective. And they finally did what I wanted them to do with the first season, which is where they started to get into the other characters. They started to flesh them out and explore them. They started to get like even more into Carmie's motivation. The first season ends with Carmie, that being Jeremy Allen White's character, kind of having this big revelation where he's kind of like getting deep into his soul at this meeting, basically trying to figure out his motivation for why he wanted to take over his brother's sandwich shop. And then at the end of season 1, they kind of get a Hail Mary when they discover all this money that Michael had hidden away, and they finally use it to open up this fine dining establishment that he's wanted to do for a long time. And season 2 is kind of about the construction of that fine dining establishment while they're all now that they're gonna entitled the Bear, and while also kind of giving us some more flashback and context to some of the characters as well. So going into season 3, obviously, there's a lot of expectations on the table after season 2, especially after those middle 2 episodes of season 2. And what I'll say about season 3, just off the bat, before we get into the nitty gritty, is that this is definitely a more sad season than the last season for sure. Last season felt like a really like upbeat season. Like, okay, the characters, they're finally all on the same page. There's still that normal level of chaos that we're used to, but it feels like they're working towards something. It feels like they're actually building themselves towards something. And this season, they got it. They got the restaurant. They got it up and running. But after the events of last season, where Carmie locked himself in the walk-in freezer and kind of went on that little mini rant, yeah, this season is definitely setting us up for another little bit of a decline and kind of, what we love from our anti-heroes, where Carmie is possibly starting to become a villain. We don't know. So what were your overall thoughts on season 3?
I feel like this happens with a lot of shows where the first season they lay the groundwork, and then the second season is like a big improvement that they can build on it, and then maybe the third season, at least for me, isn't quite as strong, but it's close. Uh, but regardless, yes, you mentioned it's more sad, it's more melancholy, if you will, not as chaotic. I really like the chaos. Uh, but that's part of the beauty of the show, is that where you can have an entire episode just focused on one side character, and it's still just as good as the rest of the show. Like, I don't know many shows that do that. Like, the first one that comes to mind is the Lost Sister in Stranger Things,
Mm.
but that's just a completely separate thing. Like the episode that Ayo Edebiri directed in this one, focused on
Yes.
Tina. That was
Yes.
like one of my
Napkins.
favorite episodes.
That's I as soon as I saw, I'm like, this is gonna be the best episode of the season for sure. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. You're right. It's not as strong as season 2, but season 2 like was such a force of nature to be reckoned with, I would say. This season, what I liked about this season is it did what most great shows do well, which is it continued the story in the most natural way. Carmen is now like a complete control freak. He wants to run everything. He's kind of doing exactly what was done to him in training. He's changing the menu every day. He's burning through finances. And you can see that like a little bit of that chaos that the characters were trying to escape from the original Chicago beef when he was running it, it's kind of coming back a little bit. And you start to see that and its influence on the other characters as well. It's a stressful season. They're all kind of dealing with a lot of stress right now. Richie's dealing with stress. Sugar, their sister, is going through stress. She's about to have a baby, literally, as we see. And of course, everybody else is trying to keep up the steam. Sydney's going through a lot as well. Sydney gets a pretty big offer later on throughout this season, ultimately. And even with the first episode, which is pretty much just like I call a greatest hits album, where it's basically just Carmen and flashbacks to other and better moments in his life in order to kind of contrast with the rest of what he's going to be doing this season. Like I said, it's a lot more of an intense season and kind of a downer. But like at the same time, the thing that I really came to appreciate about this season is, even more so than the last one, I feel like this season was all about finding the nice moments in between the chaos and the sweet moments. And I feel like a lot of characters this season that were pretty rough around the edges in the last season, they were really having like, a nice, more open moment. You obviously saw that with Sugar's reconnection with her mom, portrayed by Jamie Lee Curtis. Oliver Platt, what's it called? Uncle's, I can't remember his name. Cicero's,
Guy from 2012.
Exactly.
That's how I know him.
Yeah, Oliver Platt started to soften up a bit. Ultimately, the napkins episode where we finally got Tina's backstory, was absolutely heartbreaking, but also like so joy. Like there were like this is the first show probably this whole year that just made me go from just feeling absolutely depressed. Like I watched the first 3 episodes on the night that it dropped on Wednesday, and I'm like, I feel like I need to take a cold shower. Like I just feel miserable, especially after that nightmare Doors episode where it just showed them like the whole episode is just them running the restaurant night after night after night. You just feel the exhaustion that comes from it. That's the thing that really sets the show apart, is the show does such a good job of blending the chaotic nature of cooking but also like kind of in a way like making a greater overall statement about those types of jobs and like what it is that motivates people to go through them. Because you're right, it is chaotic. It is, frankly, it is pretty miserable. And like, it really does take a very specific type of person to be able to do that ultimately. But in a way, it's also, I feel like, emblematic of our society where we're in right now, where everybody is working nonstop 24/7. It feels like nobody has a personal life anymore. So it feels like this show is kind of made for people like us. It's like the last like prestige show that's actually made for regular people. Whereas it feels like every other prestige show is being hijacked now by the elite in order to just like distract us from the real world problems. This one is like all about like regular everyday people's struggles ultimately. And
Yeah, and they kind of mentioned that in like the 10th episode where they're at the restaurant, like talking about why they like doing this, and it goes
Exactly.
back to the Forks episode in the last season, which is probably the greatest episode in television history.
Yeah,
Or one of
them. Yeah, one of them indeed. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a show that's made for the little people, which is why it is so special, which is why it has gone on so much. Christopher Storer, Joanna Callow, these 2 creators. Also, props to them for the turnaround time as well. The fact that they're able to shoot and edit these so quickly. So the fact that this is like the only show, I think, in the last 5 years, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago when we were talking about I don't remember what show we were talking about, but how the fact that this is the only show, it feels like in recent memory, that's put out a new season around the same time every year. I can't think of another show recently that's done that, honestly, that wasn't like cut off because of COVID or had to be delayed because of the strikes or rising production values and more expensive stars and everything. The show is like, it's an old-fashioned show. It's had a relatively, not lesser known, but like, kind of on the up and up cast. It's kind of small in nature. They don't have a lot of locations, but the cinematography and editing and shooting style of it is so well done. And it's a show that's made on actors and good characters, and that we get to know more over the course of a period of time, and that we get to fall in love with ultimately, and see kind of their struggles ultimately day to day, and you get to struggle with them, and you get to relate to them ultimately. Like the thing that makes Tina's struggle so relatable is the fact that is what so many people find themselves in the job world and job applications, when she's going to various and different assorted places, getting denied over and over again, and the whole episode that we spent with Sugar when she's having that baby, it's like, and her like reconnecting with her mother that way, and like her mother's not apologizing for all the shit that she put them through for their lives growing up, but it's all about how and I'm Richie. I haven't even get to talk about Richie, who is the freaking revelation of this entire show. Ebon Moss-Bachrach, a character actor who's been acting for years, been on a ton of shows, ton of movies, what's it called? Girls, and then the first season of The Punisher are probably the two most notable ones. Obviously, the first instance of him and Bernthal working together. And then obviously he gets this around the same time that he has like a couple episode stint on Andor, but he wins the Emmy for this show for the first season, very rightfully so. That's the other thing too. Also, the show was released in summer of 2022, and then it wins the Emmy for comedy, and also winning for Jeremy Allen White, Ebon Moss-Bachrach, and Ayo Edebiri. As far as whether the show actually qualifies as a comedy or not, that remains to be seen. But
I think it's an episode runtime thing. That's what I heard.
It's an episode runtime.
That's why Barry was still always
right. But if that's the case, they need to retitle them from drama and comedy to hour long and half hour long. That's what they need to do, because you're right. Because even Succession doesn't really qualify as a full on drama at points. Like Succession has a lot of elements, has a lot of sitcom elements that they incorporated, versus this and Barry have a lot more dramatic elements in it too. But you're right, because they do still the fact that they still compete with traditional comedies, it kind of has become a little bit of a Golden Globe situation. So if that's the case, I really do think they need to retitle it to hour long and half hour long ultimately, if that's going to be the case going forward. But as far as Richie goes, right? Like, I mean, talk about a character that had one of the greatest turnarounds. I mean, you talked about the Forks episode being one of the greatest episodes of TV in recent memory. I'm inclined to agree with you on that, because I've never seen an episode of TV that managed to actually make me like care about a Taylor Swift song being used as a background, and actually like one of the best emotional arcs that I've seen recently. And you even saw shades of that continue this season as well with some of the cameos. I mean, talk about Richie for a second. Just what a revelation that character is.
Yeah, Richie is definitely my favorite character from his many feuds with Carmie. Like that will never get old. That's just that's a staple of the show. And his rebranded self, he wears suits now. He's always wearing a suit in every scene this episode, I feel. He's going for a more authoritative position in the new rebranded Bear. And his relationship with his ex-wife is quite interesting. Like, that's an interesting angle to look at it. As a child of divorce myself, that's just kind of a different perspective on things. So I appreciate seeing that. And as you mentioned, he's just a fantastic actor. I still need to watch Andor. No, not Andor. The Punisher.
Just the first season for sure. The second season, it's all right. But Ebon Moss-Bachrach not being there, he's such a crucial part of that first season. Ultimately,
can we mention Bernthal? He was way too cool, so they had to kill him off before the show even started.
I'm building to him, and kind of like how he is the secret seed sealer of this. Ayo Edebiri as well, like I said, as the kind of this being her really big breakout, her really big thing that she had been an improv and a stand-up comic before this. Now, obviously, unfortunately, kind of as a result of her success in the show, she has unfortunately, I think, become a little bit too overexposed, considering that I think that she was the most watched actor that I saw in like 5 different things last year, between The Bear, the Ninja Turtles movie, Theater Camp, Bottoms, and one other thing that I saw her in. And now this year she's also in Inside Out 2 as well. She's become very, very marketable, but her role as Sydney has been one that I've definitely grown more used to. The first season, I definitely wasn't sure kind of what the point of her character was, and I really wasn't sure if I liked her, and I kind of did classify her a little bit as a diversity insert, but I've definitely grown more warmed up to her character over time, ultimately, and kind of her relationship, her back and forth with Carmie, how they develop this mutual respect for each other, and the fact of how, what I really like is how, where they previously thought they had the same goal, now that may have gotten a little bit construed ultimately, and I know that they're desperate for a star for the Bear, but ultimately I think you're starting to see like her kind of question to be like, okay, is this what I really want? And especially with them introducing her dad as well in the last season, portrayed by Robert Townsend, Blank Man himself, ultimately, or Meteor Man, which of the two, I can't remember, I thought was just absolutely phenomenal. Love that relationship there. Oh man. And Marcus too, as well. I completely forgot to mention him. We talked about Tina as well. Marcus as well, being another kind of scene stealer that was in the first season as the pastry chef, develops this relationship with Sydney, and then in last season as this ultimately heartbreaking arc where he gets to actually like go outside the country. He travels to Copenhagen, meets up with Will Poulter's Luca, gets to cook with him for a little bit, and then unfortunately, right on the opening night of The Bear, his mom dies, and now he's got to deal with that throughout this season. Like I said, it's the characters are really they're I'm not gonna say they're at their lowest, but they're all kind of on the up and up, ultimately, they're trying to ultimately get past everything. I think the fishes episode also, which we have not mentioned yet from last season as well, having a big means of contributing kind of to the characters' all inner trauma, where the fishes episode, which we got midway through last season, which was a flashback to a typical Christmas at the Berzatos, where we get all the cousins and everything. It reminded me very much of like, the Italian dinners that we would have, where just everything was chaos. Everybody was just yelling at each other, talking over each other, it all happens around food, where we got no less than 6 or 7 big name actors that just popped up out of nowhere. Obviously the big rumor was that with the ending of Better Call Saul, Bob Odenkirk would be joining the show, but they didn't reveal to what capacity he would be. And we got Bob Odenkirk as Uncle Lee, who may or may not be dating their mother. Jamie Lee Curtis as their mother, Donna. We get the return of John Bernthal as Mikey, Carmen and Sugar's deceased older brother, but who dies before the events of the series. In addition to Richie and Cicero and the Fact brothers, we've also get John Mulaney and Sarah Paulson, as well as 2 of the cousins who are who have been since living in New York, and Julia Jacobs as Richie's then wife, now ex-wife. And you get all these cameos in that season. That's not even to mention we get Olivia Colman herself, one of like the 5 best working actresses as Chef Terry, who Richie goes to train under in the Forks episode as well. And you kind of get all this. I think that's the moment when everybody realized, oh, this is like the new It show. Like when you can get like that amount of talent who can all show up just for like one episode, and it goes the way that it goes ultimately. And we get a couple of new star player celebrity inserts here as well. Certain that I was not expecting. I think the biggest one ultimately was John Cena when he just comes in as the third Fact brother out of nowhere. And I'm just like, wait, what? That one was like, it takes a lot to throw me for a loop and surprise me, especially in the age of the internet where nothing is a surprise or a secret anymore. But that one, I was like, whoa, like John Cena, and he just blends in seamlessly. That's what I love about the show so much, is that it can take the biggest celebrity / star / actor. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in freaking Al Pacino in the next season. Like at this point, like no holds are barred at this point.
As like an investor or something.
It wouldn't surprise me.
This is the Bear.
Yeah, it's like, so this is the Bear, huh? I don't know. It seems kind of a little chaotic for my taste, but no, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do that.
And Josh Hartnett, like 2 episodes
Josh Hartnett
earlier,
too, on the comeback trail, continuing.
He's in one scene.
One scene, literally, and I'm just like, how are they doing this? And also, this is a little bit of more of a sneaky one as well, but Brian Koppelman, the creator of Billions and the writer of Rounders, also cameos in this as well. He's been on the rewatchables frequently as Cicero's right-hand man, Computer, who they literally just call him that. I thought that was great. I didn't even recognize him. I'm like, but I recognize the voice instantly because I've heard him on so many podcasts. I'm like, oh my God, is that Brian Koppelman? What the hell? So yeah, so the show's ability to seamlessly blend in big name celebrities. You get Olivia Colman back, who gives one of the simultaneously best and most tear-jerking monologues I've seen in anything recently. We also haven't mentioned Joel McHale. We're gonna get to him. Jeff Winger himself from Community. But let's talk about Bernthal, man. And it's kind of weird because in a show that really only features him about once a season, how once again demonstrated that Bernthal really is the end-all be-all, possibly the best working actor right now in Hollywood, in the sense of where he just comes in for one sequence. He never does more than like 10 minutes of screen time in anything and just completely steals every single scene. He's been doing this for like 10 or 15 years now, honestly, really since his breakout in The Walking Dead. And yeah, just his role as Michael in the show as kind of like this overarching saint-like figure who unfortunately has passed before the events of the show, but we always get these awesome flashbacks of him and kind of how he was like this beacon of warmth that everybody kind of gravitated around, and the role that he played in everybody's lives ultimately, especially Carmen's, and how he's such a big influence on Carmen and why Carmen chooses to come back and take over his restaurant after his passing, unfortunately. I mean, we got it in episode 6 of season 1, which was, I believe, his first introduction. And when he comes in and I'm like, oh, John Bernthal's in this, I'm like, okay, I need to keep watching this ultimately. Because at that point, I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to keep going with this. I don't know if the show's really for me, ultimately. But then Bernthal comes in and I'm like, okay, it's Bernthal. It's required viewing now, ultimately. And then season 2, with the fishes episode where he's going back and forth with Uncle Lee, and just that brilliant moment of tension building where he's just chucking the forks at him. Just we get more
one of the great memes.
Yes,
since
one of the
its
great
release.
memes. The Bernthal scream. We get the Bernthal scream that we are so familiar with ultimately. But this season, oh man, I mean, how great was that napkins episode? First of all, just the framing as well, where it's him, Ebon, and Fack yelling at each other about the video game, and you see Tina crying in the forefront, which was so brilliant, where sometimes when you have something happening simultaneously in the forefront of the frame and the back of the frame, I sometimes get a little distracted and focus on one thing, but I noticed Tina crying, and then kind of their reaction to it, and then when Bernthal comes over and starts talking to her, it makes for like, oh, just one of the best moments of television easily so far this year.
It's like you're not even watching a show anymore. It's just two real people talking. Like that's just how good the writing excels in those moments. Like, and I'm sure the actors add their little mannerisms and whatnot. Like of course they do. But just to come up with that and like you said, put it out yearly. Like they almost shot it back to back with season 4, but I guess the strike probably got in the
scheduling
way.
conflicts and probably the strike. Yeah,
but I'm sure they'll get a turnaround quick enough before everyone else is too famous from this show.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bernthal, he's not there a lot, but he's just the MVP whenever he is.
He really is.
Like,
he really is. And like that moment, there's just something about like the way that him and Tina were talking in that episode where, you know, they're kind of both comparing everything. And Bernthal's like, yeah, this job, most of the time it sucks. But at the same time, it's like, I have the best time here. I have the best time here. I love it. I love these fucking people. They're all crazy. They're all psychotic. But there's something about just the realness that working in a restaurant just brings out of you. And the fact that, you know, it ultimately goes to him like being, it continues with, again, he's a little bit more of a saint-like figure. He's a little bit more of an archetype rather than a real character. But again, it's just Bernthal just brings that authenticity to it that just really, again, like the fact that when he offers Tina the job, you know, and it's just at that moment, you understand now why Tina has never left and why Tina has been there ever since. Because look, everybody works 1.5 million different jobs where you're just a number on a line, where you're just treated as another cog in the machine. It's very rare when you get that job where you actually feel like you're working, not just with your peers, but where you feel like you're part of a family. And like I said, in a time period where actually being able to have a real family is becoming much more and much more and much more of a financial hardship, and more people just getting motivated to just stick it to themselves and, you know, just continue with the grind. Having that family unit, in whether that's in the workplace setting or whether that's in the real world setting, it's more important than ever. Ultimately, it really is more important than ever. And the fact that we can still get moments like that, even if it is very brief, I think it's beyond crucial and important. And I think that's why that moment rings so true and is so emotionally wrenching and touching. And I think that's what makes that episode ultimately. And it's kind of the defining moment of the show. Now, the finale as well. I think that I like I said, I think if we're talking about 2 episodes from this season, it's the napkins episode and it's the finale. Like tomorrow, I think is what it's called. Where, you know, what's called 1 episode ago, Cicero's telling Carmie that if they don't get a positive review, then he might have to pull out of the restaurant, ultimately pull the funding. Because like I said, Carmen has been kind of burning through the budget in an attempt to make a new menu every day, which I'm like, first of all, like the minute that you say that, it's like, bro, you finally got this working. Now you are, and I'm like, now you are the reason as to why everything is falling apart.
Even me, I know how to cook 3 things. I'm like, Dude, that's a bit
It's
extreme.
Too much. It's too much. Like, and you see it. You see the stress that it's putting on everybody else, you know, and poor Ibra having to work that sandwich window by himself, you know, and then they ultimately get the two other guys that
There's
used to work.
some good looking sandwiches though.
Oh man, that's the problem is I'm like, man, it really sucks that I love food so much because it's impossible for me to watch the show without getting hungry. And just like the way that he makes each of those dishes look so artistic, and I'm just like, I need to learn how
See,
to.
I don't like the artistic dishes. There's like nothing on there. Like, give me
There
the
is
sandwich.
nothing on there, but you can tell that like there's something that you can tell that like, okay, there's something in there, you know, especially when they mention Wagyu steak. I'm like, oh, as somebody who's had Wagyu steak before, I'm like, oh man, that's you don't mess around with that. But yeah, so. And then ultimately they get the very tragic news that Chef Terry's restaurant, Chef Terry being portrayed by Olivia Colman, where Carmie trained back in the day and where Richie went to train in the Forks episode, she's closing a restaurant ultimately. And it's this kind of brief like pause in everybody's lives where Carmie, Richie, and Sydney go and, you know, they reunite with Luca, with Will Poulter's character. Richie gets to reunite with some of the staff that he was working with as they do this last final meal at this restaurant where you have all of these incredible professional chefs coming. You even get a cameo of one very professional chef, I can't remember his name, and another flashback at the beginning of that episode telling Carmie how to properly like cook a chicken and something in kind of this the step process. And it's just like, you know, those moments of sympathy that you get from bosses when you're like, especially when you're being trained by like some of the best when that comes, you know, especially in your first week. And just moments like that I think are just so what's it called? So real, but so awesome because, what's it called? Oh my God, my brain is blanking out right now because it's saying so much with saying so little. And I think that's another part of the reason why this show works so well is it's a show that works primarily on action and showing you, not telling you everything. You know, so many shows are dependent on dialogue and getting you through loads of exposition. And the thing that I've really liked about the last couple of great shows that we've gotten, you know, this, Succession, Barry, Ted Lasso, Reservation Dogs, is they have all become Slow Horses. They have all become so much more cinematic in the sense of really demonstrating action through action and not a lot of dialogue, which is what shows have been dependent on so much on the past. And it's such a beautiful cathartic moment for Richie, kind of, you know, getting to say goodbye to the thing that really helped him improve as a person ultimately, you know, and he's going through a tough time as well, debating whether he or not he's going to his ex-wife's new wedding, which, as we probably both know, that's a pretty painful thing. That's a very, very, very painful thing, you know, and as much as I love Julie Jacobs and, you know, Josh Hartnett coming in and being revealed to be her new boo, it's like, that's tough for Richie, you know, especially, you know, seeing his relationship that he has with his daughter, who he loves very much. And so now he's got to say goodbye to this other thing that really, really helped him improve and really, you know, helped turn him into the person that he is. And then you've got, and then you've got obviously Carmen's confrontation with ultimately one of his own personal demons that he was battling. We get flashbacks to his training in New York with Joel McHale, or as I call him, the chef from hell, who just absolutely belittled him and psychologically kind of destroyed him and now has kind of turned him into him, you know? And it's kind of, when he finally confronts him, we get a little bit of a Terrence Fletcher syndrome, what I call, you know, J.K. Simmons' character from Whiplash, where he's like, listen, you were a mediocre chef when I met you. I made you great. And he's like, you ruined my life. You gave me ulcers and made it impossible for me to actually like not enjoy things. And Joel McHale's only confirmation is you're welcome. And it's kind of one of those like, oh man, like, like were you
I enjoyed that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great encounter for sure, but
I mean, I have not watched Community yet. I know you will scold me for that eternally, but you know, Lost first, okay?
Lost first.
But no, I really enjoyed that that confrontation towards the end. There's a nice payoff to the many flashbacks we've had. Still a lot of payoffs to be had in the coming seasons, I'm sure, but that was a highlight of that last episode for me.
Yeah, that was a highlight. I really, really enjoyed that one. I enjoyed Sydney's moment bonding with Luca. That's the thing. We didn't get as many of the returning celebrities, but the fact that they brought back Poulter, they brought back Coleman, and they brought back Mulaney for all of 5 seconds in some of the flashback montages in episode 1, and they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis. So I like the you know, how they're continuing to pick and choose with certain of the big name celebrity inserts, but also with Sydney as well, and how that impacts her, where she gets an offer from this other guy, this Adam Shapiro guy, in order to potentially go and work for his place that he's starting up, you know? It's for a higher raise, it's for insurance benefits, and it's definitely a much more calm or chaotic thing. And the other thing, too, that I love about this final episode of this season is that it's kind of an indictment on on the entire way that Carmie's been running the restaurant, which is where they're kind of the whole thing. They're like, yeah, it's like, we're tired of the dysfunctionality. You know, the whole point of the kitchen is it's supposed to be a calm place among friends, ultimately, you know, where you're kind of bonding over this, but also how that factors into Chef Terry's final monologue, where she's like, yeah, I did this for a while and I loved every minute of it, but now it's time for me to step back and actually have a life. I've done what I can do with this. And it's just the way that she enunciates it. It's like, it might be the best Olivia Colman has ever been in anything. And this is somebody who has already won an Oscar and it will more than likely win an Emmy when the guest nominations are announced for this past year, which of course will be for season 2 because of the way that the Emmys are announced. And yeah, there was something like
genius by them, by the way. Like all the chat is about the next season, but they're actually nominated for the
it's pretty
previous
smart,
season.
honestly. It's very, very smart, kind of how they do that, because you remember,
And all the other shows are getting mad because
Yep.
like, hey guys,
Yeah.
is this really a comedy?
Yep. Because season 2 was the same thing where season 1 was getting all those nominations and wins when season 2 had only dropped a couple months before. Now, granted, we obviously know because of the delayed Emmys, because of the strikes and everything, but let's face it, even if the Emmys had been, or the Bears still would have won all those Emmys. So, yeah, it's definitely setting us up for a 4th season that will definitely be interesting. But with that being said, I have a big, bold claim and prediction that I have made, and I think it goes in line with a couple of other seasons. So Barry ended with 4 seasons. Succession ended with 4 seasons. Ted Lasso only ended with 3. I think the next season of The Bear, season 4, will be the last season. I don't think that they should do another season after season 4. I think season 4 would be the perfect way to wrap things up as how they've been set up for the first 3 seasons. We see kind of what's happening with The Boys, with shows that are extending past 3-4 seasons. There's a lot of excess filler in that I don't think The Bear would be right for. So yeah, I think that unless they pull off some crazy twist that would require them to do a 5th season, which I don't think they will, I think next season is going to be the last season ultimately, and I think it's going to go out on a complete bang ultimately. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this one's kind of tough to call because I feel like it could end at 4, but it could also go to like 6. I really
It's
don't
the
know.
Succession thing, and it's ultimately going to be up to the creators as far as similar to what Jesse Armstrong wanted to do with Succession, whether they want to keep dragging it on and keep that consistent level of quality but risk losing it, or if they want to end it on like the highest of high notes, you know. And if you ask me, given the trajectory of TV these last couple of years, I think that it would be in their best interest to end it next season. Ultimately, I think that would be the best way to end everything, because obviously, yes, there are still a few lingering, overlaying storylines. Carmie still has to make up with both Claire, who we didn't talk about at all, Molly Gordon's character, who we were introduced to last season as Carmie's, kind of, school, childhood crush, who we started to get closer to last season, then ultimately chased her away by kind of in his rant, basically kind of saying that she was a distraction. And we got the Fact brothers attempted to get her back in Carmie's good graces this year, but Carmie has yet to kind of polish things up with her. It still feels like there's some unresolved thing with Michael, especially when we got at Michael's funeral, famously, he did not show up. We still have the fate of ultimately of the Bear when in the final moments of the season, we get the reveal that it's revealed to be mixed. So it's not bad, it's not good, but it's still not what Carmie wanted. We still have Sydney's decision-making as far as that goes. We have to see if Richie is going to go to the wedding. So we still have a lot of loose, overhanging story threads that do still need to be wrapped up, but I do still think that it's something that they can wrap up in 10 episodes in one more season. So that's my prediction. That's my
maybe
claim.
longer episodes.
Possibly.
Like the last 3 were 40 minutes. Like most of them were 30, 35.
Yes.
So maybe if they were all 40, I think.
Yes.
Maybe.
But I think that's kind of what
we're
we're building towards. Is season 4 is going to ultimately be the last season. So with that being said, like I said, this is a little bit of a shorter one because this is going to be edited together with House of the Dragon and The Boys. So Luke, your final thoughts and star ratings on The Bear season 3.
My final thoughts: this is absolutely one of the best shows on TV right now. It's very easy to recommend. Like everyone enjoys it. It's short, and this 3rd season is just another example of that great consistency. Almost as good as season 2, which means that's a 4.5 stars out of 5 from me.
Yes, I would tend to agree. If the last season was 4.5 out of 5 stars for me, this season I bumped down to a 4. But it's still, again, it really was maintaining the solid consistency and momentum and build-up that the show has had throughout the course of its first 2 seasons. I love the characters and kind of their individual journeys that they were going on. I like kind of like the downward trajectory that they're all on. It's setting us up for a really, really baller 4th season. But again, this season is absolutely nothing to sleep on. It's, as of right now, it's in my top 5 of the year so far. We'll see if anything else comes in and bumps it out. But yeah, this one, as far as being another summer delight, and really a good cap off to the blockbuster TV month that has been June so far. Like I said, we still have 5 more episodes of House of the Dragon. We have 3 more episodes of The Boys, 3 more episodes of The Acolyte, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that The Bear has once again won the summer and won the summer TV event. And whoops, as I knock off my what's it called? My filter there. Yeah, this one, it's absolutely one of my favorites of the year, and I could not recommend it more. As if people aren't watching it enough to begin with already, this is one of the few shows that has sort of united the culture as well. So, yep, that's our thoughts on The Bear season 3. Luke, thank you once again for joining me. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. The next video is in a very good development stage, a disaster movie tier list in honor of Twisters. Also, go watch A Quiet Place Day 1 because it's really great.
All right, it's that good, huh? Looking forward to that.
It's not that good. It's just a great time if you need something to go to.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to try and find time to see that sometime this week before I head upstate. I still have to watch that, and I have to watch the 3-hour-long Horizon Chapter 1. We'll see if and when I'm able to get to that.
I was following King Viserys' death.
My brother was a slave to his omens and portents. Anything to make his feckless flame appear to have purpose.
What are we going to do about it?
Did you really think that you could just fly about the realm, trying to steal my brother's throne?
Beasts that make us kings. Dragons did.
All right, people. Episode 3. There is a lot to cover here. I mean, there's so much that happens, but I think overall the first thing that we can say about this episode is we are on the march to war. It's official. Blood has been spilled on both sides. Shit is heating up. Shit that barely actually connects to the conflict that we saw in the first 2 episodes is already happening. That's what kicks off the episode with the Bracken Blackwood conflict. Say that one 10 times fast. And then it just spills out. Blood has been spilling all over the realm. And there's like plans being made, and there's people being sent away, and it's really sad, and it's reminiscent of some really, really other sad things. But gentlemen, before we get into the nitty gritty, Eli, starting with you, and then down to Spencer, what were your overall thoughts on this episode?
I'd say phenomenal episode. The building has continued from episode 2, only we're really starting to ramp up. Everyone is starting to put their eggs in their baskets, if you will, and everyone's got their sights set on Harrenhal, which is going to be the key to basically fortifying the Riverlands, which geographically is one of the most important locations in Westeros when it comes to war, probably the most important. And yeah, everyone's ramping up the pressure. Man, I'm just excited for what's to come next episode personally. But I know we're focusing on this one, so all I got to say is very solid episode. I think it even topped last week's, and I'm very excited to see how it keeps on progressing.
Most definitely. The thing that I've been the most that has been the most appealing to me about this season is how each episode is just progressively built on top of another. Like, they promised us a massive conflict at the end of last season, and now the show is truly delivered as far as escalating the conflict to like immeasurable heights, to the point where now there is no going back from war. Spencer, your first time on the podcast, what were your thoughts on this episode as a whole, and really just this season of House of the Dragon so far?
I think the directors are doing an amazing job with the build-up, regardless of anything. It is kind of reminding me of a shortened feeling of a Marvel build-up, but just in one entire season. I mean, season 1, I think we definitely got a good relationship between the houses 200 years ago, before the main series. But now that season 2 is actually kicking off, and we're seeing these 2 characters, 2 houses, Rhaenyra is clearly upset that she has not gotten her rightful place on the throne. But I think it's quite impressive how the directors are building up this conflict. Already seeing war happening without Rhaenyra or the other houses causing any sort of conflict or war. I just think overall, good episode. I feel the tension. I definitely do. And we are definitely at a place where we're going to see bloodshed. There's no way to avoid it.
I mean, it's inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable
Yeah,
at this
it's-
point.
Real quick, I honestly didn't expect them to go as hard as they did for the Blackwood
Yeah.
Kraken conflict.
Yeah.
Because I see these these 4 kids just kind of oh, it's a little bit of beef, it's kind of funny how they made it start out, and then when it cut and then they zoom
Boom.
out and show all the bodies,
Yeah.
I was like, wow. It makes you wonder how much that scene, that's the cost to do that scene, how many extras they needed just to have dead bodies. Honestly, I love it though. It was a great way to start off the conflict.
Well, the thing that was so great about that opening scene is it kind of pulled a little bit of season 1 trickery. Where remember, there's at the end of season 1, there's supposed to be some major battles that are going on, but they literally just cut around it by having Tyrion knocked out, just showing the after effect of Whispering Wood. That's kind of what they did here, where it's okay, obviously the battle between the Brackens and the Blackwoods at Whispering Mill or something like that.
I thought it was Whispering Wood.
Whispering Wood, yeah. So that's Whispering Wood. That's the first major conflict of the show, and they literally just cut past it, just show the after effects, and that's kind of what sells it all the opening scene. It's funny because if I'm not mistaken, I believe that possibly one of those kids, or possibly one of the rulers or knights or something in that fight, was one of the kids who proposed to Rhaenyra in the beginning of season 1. When they were having that fight, and then they ended up getting into a fight.
Actually.
And the smaller kid, who I believe was a Bracken, killed the older kid who was a Blackwood. So
Right.
I thought that was pretty interesting right there. So that's kind of what kicks us off. So the episode kind of starts a little green heavy and then gets more black heavy near the end. Definitely not at all any problems with that phrasing that I just said right there. What's it called? Kristen Cole attends his first meeting as Hand of the King. I mean, geez, it's like this guy's in an active competition to just get worse with every single episode. I don't know how you do that. I don't understand how you do that.
At this point, you have to respect it, to be honest, because he's climbing the ladder. Even though as sick as he is, he's climbing the ladder as a character in the kingdom. I just think that one, he's sick. He's not well.
No,
sending
definitely
Eric on
not.
into just suicide into the kingdom just to go murder, assassin Rhaenyra is.
Yeah, I mean
he's not.
He's chasing glory, that's for sure.
He is chasing glory indeed. Yeah, his plan to rally forces from all of the neighboring castles, which all have pledged loyalty to Rhaenyra, convert them to his side, and then march for Harrenhal. Which Daemon has already taken by this point because he flew there and took it in 3 seconds flat, which I thought was hilarious. I think that's some beautiful irony juxtaposition. Daemon did not have a lot of screen time in this episode, but they made very, very effective use of it. Also, we got an introduction to a couple of major characters that are going to play a major hand in the conflict coming forward, some more than others. The first one being Sir Simon Strong, the current ruler / Castellan of Harrenhal himself, being, Larys Strong's great uncle, I believe. Is because he mentioned that Larys Strong and Harwin Strong's father, Sir Robert Strong, I believe, was his nephew. So you have that portrayed by Sir Simon Russell Beale. And then you also have the introduction there of Alice Rivers, the sorceress, as the Melisandre stand-in, portrayed by Gail Rankin from Glow. She portrayed She-Wolf in Glow on Netflix, for anybody who remembers that little show. So
that's where I've seen her.
Yes,
I did not make that connection.
Lucky that's what I'm here for. So
what would I do without you, Dom?
Obviously a lot to unpack here, first and foremost.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Kristen Cole. Daemon, let's talk about him. We don't get a lot of him in this season, but I mean, obviously continuing off of that argument that he had with Rhaenyra, the fact is he takes Harrenhal, but at this point we don't know if it's for him or if he's still pledging for Rhaenyra. He claims that it's still for Rhaenyra, but I mean, what are our thoughts on Daemon real quick, since we don't get to spend as much time with him in this episode?
I really liked kind of seeing his inner conflict with that little vision he had. I think really tells us all we need to know in terms of kind of how he's grappling with everything. I mean, is it more about his ambitions? He says it's for Rhaenyra, but I mean, he seems to be very conflicting or hypocritical in some of the actions he takes, and I think the image of Rhaenyra I really like the poetry in that scene of her sewing the child's head back together, just kind of I'm just here to clean up all your messes, and that maybe shows that he does feel immense guilt for what he does to Rhaenyra, and I really like that transparency that the writers gave us without actually saying it outright.
Yeah, and also the fact that they
Yeah.
brought back Millie Alcock, obviously, who portrayed younger Rhaenyra in the first half of season 1. I'm like, I was waiting. I'm like, they're gonna find a way to sneak her back in here somewhere.
I mean, they have to
did.
with how good
Yeah.
of a performance she
Oh
put
yeah,
up. I
she
feel
was
like
that was a true breakout performance. She's
Yeah.
gonna be Supergirl now, so she was cast in as Supergirl in
kidding.
the upcoming Supergirl movie that's coming out in 2 years.
I do. Just to actually continue off what you were saying, I do think that with Damon, it is actually kind of nice to see exactly where we are with him mentally, because I feel like we would never gotten anything like that beforehand. So seeing the visions of what was that message he got towards the end of the episode where he was like, "This is where you're gonna die."
Yeah, this is where you're gonna die. Yeah, which is true,
Right.
by the way,
Which
for
is
those
true,
who've read
right.
Fire and Blood.
Yeah. So, like Eli was saying, we're gonna get a taste of what's probably going to happen in this series later on. And on top of that, we're also seeing some of his anger that he had with his brother, not trusting him, and what we had last season. So I think it's all coming together. Now it's playing. We're getting a clear picture of where we're headed with Damon. He is progressing though. He is trying to build up that castle. What was the name of the castle again?
Harrenhal.
Harrenhal, right? So war starting now. Yes, he did mention that they are losing counts of soldiers, but I do kind of respect his amount of initiative, trying to at least benefit the Rhaenyra side and gaining back control. So,
Indeed,
yeah.
Very
indeed.
ambitious fellow.
Very ambitious
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah. So now let's go back to King's Landing. There's a lot that happens at King's Landing as always. First off, Aegon. Oh man, Aegon right now, he is in his just not being able to catch a break phase at all. He is. First, he's like, I'm going to ride out with Sir Criston Cole's forces. I'm going to prove Sunfire is going to be just as good as, as Vhagar, even though Sunfire is barely, a tenth the size of Vhagar? Not even?
Vhagar's just a behemoth.
Vhagar's a living, like not even a tank. It's just like a flying whale. That's
the
what Vhagar
second
is.
largest dragon in history.
In history.
Valyrian.
Well, it was said that Vhagar around the time of her death was roughly the size of Valyrian. That she'd grown quite a lot.
In the
wow.
book, she was maybe about 10% smaller, but yeah.
Okay, but the point is that Vhagar, for having lived as long as it has, ultimately is the size that it is. So, but Aegon continues to want to prove himself. He's ready to lace himself up in the Conqueror's armor, and Sir Larys Strong has to persuade him not to go, which I think was hilarious. I just think that what's it called? I think that Larys Strong's role in this show is becoming even more pronounced. Obviously, it causes the way that he's definitely able to subtly manipulate Aegon with a rumor that he totally made up. Nobody actually said that. I guarantee you, he so obviously made that up. Not to mention the fact that obviously, for a lot of reasons, it would be better for Aegon to stay safe behind the walls of King's Landing rather than fly out. Obviously, given that we know what happens in the next episode, we know that's not going to happen. But still, he is still the king as of right now, even if he is a usurper. So he should probably stay inside the walls. But of course, he doesn't want to. I mean, guys, where are we?
Bloodthirsty.
Well, yeah, I was about to say, where are we with Aegon? Because at the same time, Aegon is just as sympathetic as he is, an idiot who wants to prove himself as the ruler and is ultimately letting his insecurities out. He truly is the anti-Joffrey in a way. It's one of the most fascinating character comparisons to their original portrayal that I've seen in a spinoff in a minute.
Yeah, I agree.
From what I think, he has a good heart, but he's still a naive kid, really, and I don't think he really understands the real world. Just he's lived in the castle all his life. Now he's suddenly just told he's basically the king of the world and can do whatever he wants, and kind of seeing his him maybe reverting a little bit back to his old kind of douchebag fuckboyish ways with his buddies that are just now part of the new Kingsguard.
It's literally
to the whorehouse.
It's literally just watching the soup support Homelander on the boys. They're just sucking up to him nonstop.
Yeah, and I know we talked about it last week. I thought he had a great performance in the most recent episode, but I think this week even topped it, where it's just I definitely did feel a lot more sympathetic towards him.
Mm-hmm.
Just he really was, I don't know how to word it, but just he felt a lot more human this episode, where we kind of see those conflicting sides of his personality.
Well, we definitely see both sides of his personality, obviously based on what follows afterwards. First in the tavern, which I'll come back to because that introduces another important character. But then obviously the big one, finding Aemond in the brothel. That's
I felt so bad.
That's a tough moment. We know that cuts deep for Aemond for so many different reasons. And he
was apologetic towards what he did at the end of last season.
Yeah,
killing
killing Lucerys. Yeah,
he felt bad, and that was his only like outlet in a way.
yep,
And then here comes Aegon. Hey,
yeah.
totally
Yeah.
ruins the
Oh,
moment.
yeah.
Totally blows up his life. And like the
Yeah.
thing is, the two of them both were like still conflicted as far as like whether they were going to go out. And then it was decided they were both going to stay because they need Vhagar to guard the city and they need Aegon obviously there. But now obviously this is going to prompt them both to go out because we know Aegon wants to prove himself. And now Aemon is going to be like, I need to get as far away from my brother as possible. And that's going to be
Right.
so interesting as far as following their motivation as well. See, this is what I love about the show so much. The show is taking all the factual events that we know happen in the book and filling in all the gaps with all like the juicy
Yeah,
character
no,
moments that
it-
lead up to those events.
Completely, like I say it every week, but it completely recontextualizes like some of the things that happen, or at least why they happen, right? And we're unding so much more about these characters than we ever could have in the book, just because of how the book was written. Because it was written by someone who was not alive or around, like
Right.
when everything happened. So he's taking everything from written sources or stories passed down, and that's what I do appreciate about adapting something like Fire and Blood, is that there is enough of like ambiguity in there where they can make some things different if they need to without detracting or changing too much. And that's what I thought is really cool. And looks like we
Oh, it
lost
looks like
Spencer.
well, it looks like we got an internet cutout for a second there. We'll see.
That's
We'll
not
see what
good.
happens.
But
It's been happening a lot recently.
yeah, I hear you. But in terms of Aemon, I want to talk about Aemon for a second, because I thought Aemon, like, just the slyness he kind of had with egging Aegon on, like,
Yeah, that was
better if you were just safe, but kind of just the tone of his voice made it seem like, maybe you're a bit of a coward, maybe you
Yeah.
should go. And kind of, especially the face he had, just as kind of he was walking away, right? Kind of said everything, right? And
it cut deep. That cut
Yeah.
really deep for so many different reasons.
well,
honestly.
I almost feel like, and it says a lot about, we learned a lot about his character too, in ways like, you kind of just don't expect it with a show like this. Like, he still sleeps with the same woman every night, every week, when he could literally have anyone he wants. It kind of speaks more to, his loyalty. Hey, he's back. Look at
There
that.
he is.
And,
Apologies.
yeah, no worries. But no, I thought it was very interesting, and I almost wonder if that woman is more loyal to him and might be
Probably.
willing to spill the beans of whatever happens.
Probably.
And, yeah. So I really liked where the conflict, not really a conflict, but semi-conflict between Aegon and Aemon is heading.
Yeah, I agree. And then obviously the other big one is we get the third dragon seed. So I've been talking about them for a little bit now. I've kind of been like, I should have called this section like my dragon seed head count, basically. So we got obviously Hugh Hammer, episode 1, the writer of Vermithor, Adam of Hull, later Adam Valerian. In episode 2, the future writer of Sea Smoke. We also got a little Sea Smoke insert there when it was kind of explained by Rhaenyra to Mysaria. And this episode, we have Ulf the White, future writer of Silverwing, and he kind of, in his introduction, he's kind of explaining his bastard relationship to, to the what's it called, to the Targaryens via Jaehaerys. Nonetheless, Eli, you wanna break down if that was accurate as far as like his actual heritage, or because I believe that was just rumored in Fire and Blood.
I'm not gonna lie. Pretty much all I remember was that he was a Targaryen bastard. I don't remember his exact parentage.
Like, I know that much
I
was
believe
confirmed.
what they said in the show is right. I mean, granted, I haven't read the book in years, but to my knowledge, like, he wasn't a character I really paid attention to a lot when I did read it. But
Right.
no, I liked that scene just because it also says a lot, kind of just about, like, it makes the world feel a lot more grounded when he's just like, yeah, Rhaenyra is the one true queen. I'm loyal to her, and I'm a dragon seed. I'm gonna answer the call and just take up arms against the king. And then the king walks in. He's like, Lord is crowned. Like, hey, sir,
Right.
yeah, like,
Yeah, that was great.
And his buddies just teasing. Oh, I would absolutely do that to anyone if I saw them do that.
That
Like,
would be hilarious. Yeah.
that
Spence, what did you think of Ulf's introduction?
I think it was kind of humbling a little bit. It was like he came from a humbling background, that he comes from so much royalty and all these different houses.
but never
sorry.
really got any of the luxury with it.
Exactly, and the guys at the table are just looking at him like, "Who is this guy?" Like, they don't believe him. They think he's full of crap. So, I think overall, it's interesting. Maybe we see later on how he might progress, because I'm sure they're gonna continue seeing, narrating his perspective.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, him, Hugh, and Adam end up riding three of the dragons along with Rhaenyra's forces. So, and then play crucial parts in the war to come. So that's kind of the definition of the dragon seed, basically, to kind of fill you in. Basically, is that after certain events transpire in the next episode, the Blacks find themselves in need more dragon riders. So they put out feelers to basically anybody who could potentially think that they could tame and ride a dragon, you know? And so it's basically essentially like a tournament that takes place over a couple days of like people attempting to find and tame dragons. And there's a lot of bloodshed that happens, but
People
it's
fucking die.
oh yeah. Well, that's what happens when
Genocide.
you fuck with dragons. You get burned.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I like how they're handpicking these characters together. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's eventually we're gonna see a huge, alliance from different sides that will come together as
The,
you know.
the
what
most
we-
compelling part about all their characters' introduction is how they're all working class people. They're not like royalty. And I think that's what's kind of the most important,
Yeah.
even more important than being bastards. Because the thing is that even with Jon Snow, who was the reigning bastard of Game of Thrones, he still grew
was.
up in a royal family. But the whole
Yeah,
thing
he
about
still
bastards,
lived in a castle.
right, and the whole thing about bastards is that 9 out of 10 times they're baseborn, right? Obviously, they were when royalty had kids out of wedlock with common folk, ultimately. And so there were people that
Right.
sure have royal blood in their veins, but they obviously have no access. But the fact that it's like all working class people, people who are like hanging out in pubs, have real jobs and real responsibilities, even though Adam obviously resides on Driftmark, so he's got more of like a drifter, loner, hippie lifestyle. He still obviously is lesser known and baseborn. His brother just simply works in Lord Corlys's army, so he has like the benefit of that. So
Right.
I really like that aspect of how these characters are being introduced. So now let's head back to we get one more moment ultimately with the Greens, and that is Sir Criston Cole riding out with then another big character introduction, Alicent's brother, Gwaine Hightower. First of all, can we
Gwaine.
just talk
Oh
about
Lord.
can we just talk about that name for a second? Gwaine. The fact that somebody actually came up with that, it's one of the funniest things I've ever heard. And the fact that
Yeah.
he's portrayed by Freddie Fox, who is just been killing it recently in Slow Horses. Unfortunately, his character just died in a rather hilarious way in this most recent season of Slow Horses. But just talk about the latest poster child for just British smugness. And like the funny thing is that he has every right to hate Criston Cole. And Criston Cole has already proven himself to be a piece of shit so often, but he still somehow is like more unlikable already than Criston Cole. And I don't even know how that's possible.
For sure.
I'm assuming just because of like the blatant like smugness with which he carries himself. Ultimately.
I feel like Criston Cole is just that guy you love to hate. Like he's just gonna be an insufferable prick. But honestly, I feel like his actor's doing such a great job at like making us hate him. Because
Yeah.
because what's nice about the whole ambiguity with the conflict, like who's the rightful heir, you can make arguments to both sides because like George R.R. Martin is famous for saying this himself, like they never outlined a clear succession plan, and that's why different people want to interpret it just for their own means to power. So you can make arguments for the Greens and the Blacks, but just having characters that you can hate, especially like having a Criston Cole that like is unanimously just despised by everyone watching, is I think a really smart move to
I said this last week that like there's really only 3 actually bad people on Team Green, and the rest are kind of all just misguided or trapped in situations that are out of their control.
Mhm.
It's only
Yeah.
Otto Hightower, who's now gone, and also all of his
Unfortunately.
smashed to smithereens.
Yeah.
Laris Strong and Criston Cole. Aegon unfortunately has like gone down the path. He's like become the Anakin Skywalker, but that's not his fault ultimately. Like everything that happened was ultimately out of his control. So I don't necessarily blame Aemond, not so much, but Aemond also is mature enough to be able to take it. So obviously,
I do want to say one thing though before you go on to whatever other topic that you have. I do want to appreciate Otto's development over time because I did not like Otto because to me he seemed very manipulative, trying to get climb the ladder, trying to get to royalty, which in fact he did. But I think as we see him progress, he's noticing Aegon's flaws, and they're not. He's making really bad decisions. Remember when he hung all of the
right?
Oh my!
Last week, all the rat catchers.
Yeah, all the rat catchers.
We finally do see in this episode that they got cheese.
Yeah. Oh no!
Right.
Well, we saw that last episode. They got cheese last episode too.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Oh,
yeah.
No,
that shot was just like to show like the passage of time and like how fast the corpse is rotting.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. That's the first time I saw his corpse. I must have been in the bathroom or something.
And I honestly,
I genuinely don't remember.
And I felt bad that Otto left. I was like, he is your last saving grace right now. Like he's the only one that is going to genuinely give you advice that is going to be like unhinged and not sugarcoated if you're messing up. And again, he did. So
the problem is Otto just being as cold as he is kind of he kind of gives his advice without emotion, but Aegon is not someone to think, logically, and he
Yep.
pretty much all the decisions he does make are almost entirely on emotion, just whether it's hanging out with his buddies or trying to get revenge or
Yep.
whatever it might be.
This
So
is-
we're definitely going to see how his impulsiveness
child.
is going to impact the realm and the war in the next
Oh
episode.
yes, literally in the next episode.
Literally
yeah,
in the next
I'm so
episode.
excited. I feel like literally we're just being like, but then we're being like, yeah, this episode was good, but the next episode, man, that's gonna be the shit. I feel like that's
Yeah.
I feel like
not
that's
not to take away from this episode.
Not take
because
away from this
in my
episode.
opinion, it was the best episode.
And
of the season
apparently,
so
also,
far.
we found out that we can find out the episode's name by listening to the official podcast after. But I'm like, why do I have to do that? Why can't I just?
Mhm.
Why can't they just release the episode names beforehand?
Yeah.
But
what are we calling this week's episode, Don?
right now I was calling it Departures, but I don't think that's the name of it because I got last week's name wrong. Okay, this one is called The Burning Mill. That's what this episode is called. And the next
Okay.
week we know is The Dance
That's
of
fair.
Dragons.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
now we're moving back to Team Black. Like I said, we talked about Daemon taking Harrenhal. Now we're talking about Rhaenyra. First things first, obviously, the thing that happens that I love is Kristen Cole and Gwaine Hightower are already, they're not even like 10 feet outside the gates, and they already almost get attacked by Baela riding Moondancer. I know that's an original scene that did not necessarily was confirmed in the books, but still, that's hilarious that they almost got taken out by a teenage girl and what? Barely fully grown dragon?
They were she was very close.
Moondancer is slightly bigger than Arax, if we're going to like the dragon scales for a second.
Right.
We know that Moondancer obviously is on the smaller side, but Moondancer is nimble and can hold her own, So
Yeah.
I thought that was I thought that already establishing Cole and Gwaine. I'm gonna have so much fun saying that name for the rest of it. Already establishing Cole and Gwaine's relationship first off was just hilarious, and then see the continuation of that was great. But unfortunately, it alerts Rhaenyra that unfortunately she can no longer wait for the Northern and Vale forces to come and save them. Unfortunately, as we see, the forces are on the move, so Rhaenyra unfortunately has to make her move. She can't, and is considering that she's heard no word from Daemon as far as Harrenhal goes. She is forced to start making her moves, and that begins with her the infamous act of sending her kids away, which all kind of has once again negative effects going in all sorts of directions. She has.
You think she'd learn?
Yeah, you would think. Well, these ones ultimately
that was a low blow, Eli.
Yeah, but I think that they were.
I'm just saying.
I think the whole thing that she was probably thinking is that, okay, if we need to make a quick getaway from Dragonstone, it's going to be a lot easier to do if it's just us adults as opposed to dragging a pack of kids, because
logically,
Joffrey is still is not even 10 yet. And barely it's not even 10 yet, and then Viserys and Aegon the youngers are both infants still, so they're 3-year-olds. So and obviously, so we know what happens with those two if they put them on that infamous ship ride to Pentos. Oh man, I want to see if, but I think I don't think we're getting that this season, but I think that might be the beginning of season 3, honestly, which would be so awesome.
Probably.
The battle of the Gullet, that would be absolutely incredible if that kicked off season 3, but. What I was also going to say is then is the focus on Rhaena ultimately and kind of her role. Rhaena, honestly, in the books, always kind of had a thankless role because of the fact that she never had a dragon hatch for her, or when it did, it was already too young. She was kind of forced into this motherly role in order to kind of take care of Joffrey when she escorted him to the Vale for his safety keeping place, to ward there. So, what's it called? What are your guys' thoughts on that and kind of the attention that she got ultimately, kind of her separation from Baela? And honestly, the scene where Jace had to say goodbye to, Jace has been kind of hanging in the background just guarding his mother, but obviously, they're saving that for another big moment too. Obviously, we know what's happening next episode with Rook's Rest, and if Battle of the Gullet kicks off season 3, oh boy, these bodies are dropping like flies. But oh man, so what did you guys think of what I called the departure, the epicenter of this scene, of this sequence?
You can go first, Spence.
I feel like I do think that she could maybe have a little bit more screen time. I do think that we see her enough in certain scenes, like for example when she stormed there was a cathedral when Aegon was being crowned.
Oh yeah.
That was powerful. I'm not that she was making a statement, and she could have ended them right there and then, but she didn't.
Oh yeah,
that made everybody's lives easier if she had.
I know, sure. Right? But that would have removed all conflict. But I do think that we do have a balance between her being nurturing as a mother, but also being somewhat of a warrior too.
Well, we talking about Rhaenyra or Rhaenys?
Rhaenyra.
Okay, well, because that was Rhaenys that busted out of the
Oh, sorry, my bad. Rhaenys, sorry. Yeah, Rhaenys.
All these names sound similar, man.
Yeah,
It's,
they're all the
it's-
same.
Yeah, Rhaenys. Apologies, Rhaenys. Yeah, I do think that I want to see her more, in general.
Oh,
Just in general.
oh,
You'll be
oh,
seeing
And
my
I know
friend.
I know you know more about the lore than me.
Oh man.
So,
Oh man. Oh man. Oh man.
so all I'm saying is that I know there's like some hidden potential with her as a warrior, her as a a writer in general, because we saw a glimpse of it a few episodes back. So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So-
I feel like with Rhaenys, she, I feel like her entire character, she's just been wanting to always punch above her weight and prove that she is just more than just the person that was passed up for the throne because she was a woman. I think the
Yeah.
show has done a really good job of exploring the gender dynamics in a not Marvel way, or not Disney way, I should say.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
just
like
look at the Acolyte for comparison.
Yeah,
Wah,
oh,
wah.
dude.
They canceled it. Thank you.
Oh
The-
my gosh, I threw up in my mouth a little bit when you mentioned the Acolyte. But no, I feel like the show's handled that very well. In terms of, I really like the duality between Rhaenyra and Aegon. In so many ways, just our opposing kings and queen. Just because Aegon is kind of reluctant to step up and even take the mantle in the first place, and has not really shown any qualifications to be a good ruler. But the realm is more accepting of him just because he's got a dick, right? And Rhaenyra, is obviously shown to be the much more capable ruler. Even when she was like 13, 14, she's giving her father really
Very
good
young.
advice in the
Yeah.
in the Council of the Seven, and just but that's it. Really, I think there's so much room for discussion about the way things play out, and that's why I think this is such a great show, just between all the complexities and the nuances between the gender dynamics is, I would say, at the
Exactly.
heart.
Exactly.
And yeah, I know you wanted to talk about Rhaenyra for a little bit, and I feel like also kind of that mirroring that duality with her and Aegon this episode, we both kind of see their reluctancy to almost go into war, right? Or maybe Aegon is again more impulsive, more willing, but Rhaenyra is smarter
Yeah.
and at least trying to find one last solution, even though there really is no possibility of it
No.
at this point. And
There's
that
no
is kind of segueing to the conversation with her and Allison at the end. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh!
Yeah. I was about to. Do
as
we
a
want to
lore-
jump
as
there
a-
right away?
Oh,
I
we
mean,
gotta.
Yeah.
As a lore junkie, that hit
Yeah.
all the spots.
yeah. I
Yes.
mean, oh man, that's just. You want to talk about a tantalizing way. You know what this reminded me of so much, and this is kind of why I'm enjoying this season. So a couple of stats check facts for you guys. As you see, I just straightened up in my chair. This is the first season of This is the first season of Game of Thrones to air in the summer since the infamous season 7, which was the only season to not air in April and instead premiered in June and went until late July. Ultimately, actually, no, I'm wrong. It started in July and went until late August. It was the only season of Game of Thrones to do that. This is the first season since then to do so. And what I like is how each kind of one of the episodes is sort of mirroring the structure of that, but in like a better way. See, this is what I was talking about. I knew that season 7 was still good because the structuring of the episodes was good. It's just kind of the individual stories that were like kind of throwing it off ultimately.
Yeah.
You know?
At that point,
yeah,
I just feel like too many plot lines were abandoned.
So with that being said, ultimately, kind of that's what I'm getting from here. And as far as the mirror imaging between like episode 3 of the season and episode 3 of season 7 with the Queen's Justice, which infamously made my top 10 favorite episodes of Game of Thrones.
I can see what you're saying, yeah.
I was absolutely tantalized by how this ended. This was Jaime meets Olenna Tyrell, but like 3 times over. When Rhaenyra, with help from Asarya, sneaks in and what church was that? Where were they meeting, Eli?
It was just. I think that's just one of the septs. That wasn't
okay.
the
I know it wasn't the great. I know it wasn't the great sept of Baelor. It wasn't that.
No. Well, the thing with the 7, right, is they have multiple temples for the different gods. Just because I honestly couldn't recite them all off the top of my head, but she says it in the show. The Stranger is one of them. That's like the god of death. The Stranger comes for us all.
If talking about the 7, it's the father, the mother, the warrior, the smith, the maid, the crone, and the stranger.
I'm surprised you knew that and I didn't.
I'm a lore junkie, Eli. Trust me. With this shit,
I'm a lore junkie. That was pretty impressive. I can't lie.
Put me in Game.
I couldn't even remember too.
Put me in Song of Ice and Fire trivia. I would absolutely crush it.
Put him in, coach. Put him in.
Oh man. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, this conversation, it's the foundation of everything. It's where this entire conflict started, was obviously between, Rhaenyra versus Alicent, duty versus rebellion, ultimately. And this is kind of where we are as a result of it. And the fact that Rhaenyra seeks to attempt to maintain some sort of peace at the urging of Rhaenys, as well as Rhaenys is like, listen, this is getting to a point where there's no walking back. And soon, if this continues to go, this war will go on for years. And soon people will forget why it even started. They'll just be fighting for the sake of fighting. And
Right.
Rhaenyra realizes that she's got to do something about that. So she finally manages to confront Alicent and begs her to end the war. And they're going back and forth. They're trying to figure out like what happened. And Alicent is still steadfast. She's like, Viserys changed his mind. And Rhaenyra's like, there's no fucking way that would have happened. He was steadfast that day that I was the ruler. Like, what happened? And then it's finally revealed. Alicent reveals exactly what Viserys said. And Rhaenyra, being the only one that would have, like, you put anybody else in that room, you put Daemon, Otto Hightower, Kristen Cole, all of them, you put every single person in that room, the only person that's going to understand what Viserys is actually saying was Rhaenyra, because she was the closest one to him. The fact that
she was the OG heir, right? The prophecy of a song
right.
of
And the whole
fire.
rule is the fact that this prophecy of the ice and fire has to be passed down only to the heir, which is why Daemon was never told, because Viserys never really intended to make him heir. Now, that ties into a whole other thing with Daemon, but as far as this being kind of the cornerstone, and once Rhaenyra realizes that the Aegon that Viserys was talking about was Aegon the Conqueror, not Alicent's Aegon. Alicent, I love that moment right there. That end moment where Alicent is
that realization. Yeah.
The realization that she's like, oh my God, I fucked up.
Right.
And this is all my fault. Like, because that's the worst part.
Yeah.
That, like, Otto was still waiting for Viserys to die, but Alicent was the one that basically gave him the confirmation. It's like, and
he said, like, wood? She was like, wood? I was like,
all stem from a lie. It all
and you really gotta feel for her, though, because
you really do.
The only Aegon she knows is her son.
Right.
How could she have known he was talking about the original Aegon?
It was a thing, obviously, that was only exclusive
you know?
for Targaryens. And if not for the fact that Viserys mistook Alicent for Rhaenyra, she never would have known otherwise,
And that's what I love.
That's so unfortunate
about this, as just someone like from the book, because you just think, oh, the Greens just, they said this all as a lie, right? How could they have known, right? Oh, Viserys died immediately. Let's just say that he named Aegon his heir, right? You maybe think Otto has something to do with that, but it was all just a misunderstanding. And that's what's so tragic about this whole thing. Is that
it's Shakespearean. It's purely Shakespearean
really
in its execution, and that's what makes it so well done. Honestly, even more so than Game of Thrones. This is more Shakespearean than Game of Thrones at this point.
I never thought that the dots were going to connect in this way. I'm so happy that they did.
Yeah. This started originally, I thought it was going to be more Macbethish, but honestly, this has turned into King Lear at this point, and I absolutely love it. Only like post King Lear's death is when the wars all start, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. As far as, but basically that's pretty much how this episode ends. What's it called? So as far as, thoughts for next week, I mean, we obviously know that Rook's Rest is coming, and for everybody who's read the book, they know exactly how this is going to go. But I mean, do we have any other predictions as far as what might happen next week as well?
Oh, geez, man. I'm just ready for the bloodbath.
I think it's just war. I think war is the only thing path right now. Yeah, I can't really think of. It's so unfortunate. This could have been prevented.
This could have been prevented 18 different ways. Literally,
I know, so many ways, but none of them worked.
Yep. If Viserys had named Daemon his heir instead of Rhaenyra, if Viserys had never made Otto Hightower his head, if Viserys had never married Alicent, all of this shit,
she would have just known what her said.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of looking to next week, I think the character I'm looking forward to kind of exploring, at least in the next couple of episodes, is Daemon, just because of kind of his him kind of more faced with the realization of how he is, and especially because it seems like we're not going to have Nettles this season, or actually it's confirmed we're not going to have Nettles.
We're not having Nettles this season.
Is someone he kind of leaned on in absence of Rhaenyra in the books, and kind of ended up going down his own path with. It really makes you wonder what's going to happen in terms of, like, are the actions he takes going to be different? Is he going to? I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more unpredictability with Daemon in particular than any other character at the moment. So I really am curious to see what happens to him in the next half of the season. So.
For me,
Yeah.
I think that my interest lies in mostly I'm like, okay, we're getting Rook's Rest next week. So now at this point, I'm really just looking forward to the sowing of the seeds. Ultimately, that's like kind of where I'm invested. I'm invested. They've done very, very interesting, painstaking work to set up the dragon seeds. I'm very interested to kind of see where that goes, and I'm very excited to see the other dragons too. Like that's the shit, and they're gonna need it after next week. So with that being said,
we want, damn it.
yes, exactly. So with that being said,
I would have to say one more thing though.
yeah,
In my opinion, call me crazy, call me sick in the head. I'm kind of curious to see how far Kristen goes as a character. I think he is so
Not far.
like
not far.
Okay, but I mean he
Not
just
far.
seems he just seems so sinister. I mean, Damon of course has a lot of promising storytelling that I think we'll naturally see regardless. So I know we're gonna get that because I like Damon as a character for sure. But Kristen, he stirs the pot. So
He does.
So I'm definitely curious to see. It sounds crazy, but I'm definitely curious to see what he does to get his way, literally. So
No, that's a
indeed.
valid shout.
that's
Because you haven't read the book, right?
I read a little bit, but I never finished it. So technically, I'm coming. Yeah.
Okay,
This
so
is
you've got
all.
Indeed.
you've got a fresh perspective when it
Yes,
comes
Exactly.
yes,
to
indeed. So
clean
we're
slate.
so gentlemen, we're gonna leave it at that. All I'm gonna ask of you before we get out of here is your final thoughts, your star rating of this episode, and where the good people can follow you on the interweb. Spencer, as the new kid on the block here, I'm gonna start with you. What are your final thoughts on this episode? What is your
Final
star
thoughts.
rating,
Final thoughts.
and where can people follow you?
Okay. Final thoughts. I think overall we got a great startup to the major conflict. We're gonna see bloodbath war. We're gonna see characters meeting each other. We're gonna see other handpicked characters coming together to create alliances. We're gonna see the two parties actually start to hash it out. Overall, I think this
Good way to put it.
episode, yeah, yeah, and I just can't wait to see how this episode has stirred the pot and will continue going on, forward into the second season. Star rating, I have to say, if we're doing out of 5.
Out of 5.
Probably say 4.5. This is one of my favorite episodes so far, other than the first one.
Yeah, it just keeps escalating with each episode.
Yeah,
better.
It just keeps the conflict just keeps going up and up. My attention is always there.
Yeah.
So
we're about to reach that apex, maybe.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
and I didn't read the book, so I'm entirely so. And you guys could also follow me at Instagram at Spence3SS, or Smoke Society Official on Instagram. Yes.
Yes, indeed. Go follow him. He's got an awesome career
please.
brewing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, and then Eli, all of those things that I just said before, Dispenser.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. Like a 4.5, maybe pushing 5, but I want to try and reserve 5 for a select few episodes, especially just because I'm paying attention to the small details behind the scenes. I think 4.5. I think this is definitely one of the best episodes. I think it tops last week as the best episode for this season so far.
Oh yeah,
and I'm loving the character dynamics. I'm loving just the interactions. I'm loving the stuff we're getting that isn't in the book. I feel like the more they can give us that's like this is just I'm gonna eat it up every single time.
Couldn't agree more.
But yeah, if you guys want to follow me, I want to start a YouTube channel, podcast at some point. I keep saying I'm gonna get around to it, but it's also me saying like I'm gonna quit drinking after this last beer. Like it's just we're running into a bit of hurdles, but it's on the books, it's on the cards for the end of the year, hopefully. Otherwise, if you want to just give me a follow, shoot me a DM, talk about Game of Thrones, storytelling in general, you can find me at eholicky45 on Instagram. So that's where I am.
All right. As excellent as per usual.
You do.
Dustin, the Duster Mason. Dustin, thank you for hopping on last minute. I don't know what happened. Eli just completely bailed on me.
I got a haircut and I'm ready to rock.
You're looking good, man. Looking fresh right now. So
Yeah, I got the Judd Nelson.
yeah, you do. What's it called? So I was kind of just talking about how the boys, for lack of a better word, sucks. Yeah, like
no, you haven't been saying it enough. I've been watching these recaps.
Yeah.
No, this sucks. This show sucks now, and I'm really sad about it. And I'm not. I just watched the debate too because my aunt's gonna bother me about it, so I watched it. Okay, but like I'm not a political person. You know this.
Yes,
I don't care about politics, but it's just become like so unsubtle about it now. Like to a point where it's just obnoxious. And I know it's going to sound sort of like a broken record, this conversation, because we've talked about it privately, but like still, like you know most of the points I'm going to make.
Yeah, I do. Like, and it's funny that you bring that up because it's ironic that we're recapping this on the same night as the presidential debate because the thing is that like we're talking about how The Boys is the show that thinks it's so smart and so clever and so cool with its satire.
It's like an R-rated CW show.
Yeah, it's like at this point, like half the episodes are just padding it out until we can get to some other crazy shock value moment. I was just talking about the scene with the farm animals, and like I'm like, what is the point of this? Like, we know that all the main characters
feels like filler again. It's just more filler bullshit.
Yeah. And like, okay, if they'd actually gotten the virus and if it actually like had progressed to another point, okay, that would have been cool and all. But they kind of do leave it open for like, you know, with that whole reveal that he steals the husband, you know, the boyfriend guy. Right, but even that wasn't a twist because when they showed the leg, I'm like, there's no way that Newman killed her own husband or whatever baby. I don't know. Like they never actually.
No, yeah, that was that was stupid. But like, I just mean like the whole reveal is sort of like, oh well, he wants the virus to still be a thing, Butcher. So he wants there to still be for that to still be a threat. Right. You know? So that's why he kidnapped him at the end. Like that made sense. I still don't think it's a good show. I have not
but
satisfied.
Why like make it ambiguous? I'm guessing is my question.
And like, I'm skipping around, but like, Sister Sage knows that A-Train is the rat.
There's no way she doesn't. There's no way she doesn't. Yeah, we'll get to that. Like I said, I've got a structure that I'm doing.
I'm
here.
sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm 3 deep into fucking not your father's root beer.
Your father.
This shit should be illegal. I told you.
Yeah, mother. No, and funny. Did you see the Flight Risk trailer that came out with Wahlberg?
Mark Wahlberg. That's kind of funny.
I just came up with that on the spot. My improv skills are getting better.
Yeah,
my improv skills are getting better.
Okay. Yeah, no, that looks fun. It could be cool. I think it's hilarious that the marketing is like from the director of Braveheart. Like you don't know who Mel Gibson is.
Who doesn't know who Mel Gibson is? You know what's crazy though? I'm realizing now there are probably kids that are growing up now that probably like might not know who he is. I'm just realizing that.
For sure. Like that. I mean, probably the only thing they've seen him in technically is like Pocahontas, right? Like,
probably
all the younger.
But you don't actually see him; you just hear his voice.
That's what I mean. Like or like Chicken Run.
Right.
Yeah. Like those are the movies that like they probably know him from.
Yeah. Oh god. I mean, the cop who arrested Justin Timberlake recently didn't even know who he was.
Oh, let's talk about Justin Timberlake.
Oh man,
can a guy have fun? You know, he's not. He's never made like a habit out of this.
Well, I don't know. Well, according to the toxicology report, he was fucked up. Like fucked up.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, like this is not like this is like a first for Justin Timberlake. Like he's never like gotten like a mugshot before like this. Like he is kind of like he pulled a Sean Parker. It's kind of hilarious.
Little bit.
There's been I love Justin. I've loved Justin Timberlake since I was 4 years old. Okay, that was my first concert. Justin Timberlake is like my favorite Justin. It's like him and Justin Kadish. Those are the only Justins I like. And Justin Cadis is a kid we went to school with.
Justin Cadis, that's a name I haven't heard in a very, very long time. Doesn't he have like 2 kids now or something like that?
Good for him. He's a good guy.
Yeah, good guy. Miss him. All right, so Butcher and the rabbit. I want to talk about that for a second. Like, that was a tumor, right? That the rabbit had that would like burst out of its stomach and everything. And that was like, it had to be foreshadowing as far as I'm like, oh, so this is what's going to happen with Butcher now. But especially now that we know that he put the V and he didn't work. That's what I'm assuming. And especially compounded with like what we see of the effects of when they gave the V to Huey's dad. So I'm assuming that's what that was.
Let's talk about that. What are they doing with Rosemary DeWitt's character?
I don't know. Like, I'm really confused here.
The direction, like the way they lingered on her face in the last episode, like it was menacing, and then out of nowhere, she's like, "No, I thought you wanted me to give it to him," and like how she's like playing all good mom out of nowhere.
I don't trust her. I don't trust 5 seconds.
I don't understand the direction for this character at all.
Yeah.
Not even just the writing. It's just the direction and how she's like shot. And
I mean, I called it. Well, I mean, we both called it. I'm like, she has to be a villain. She has to be. There's no way that she's not.
The fact that she's Vought adjacent is just sketchy enough.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The fact that like they had to put that in the first scene you see her. It's like, oh no, she's actually kind of works for Vought, sort of, kind of. So it's like, all right, so she's not completely out of the dark. Out of like possibilities of like, oh, she could be an antagonist, you know, a minor one, obviously, but like she's not like on the level of Homelander or any of the 7 for the most part. What do you want to talk about next? Because I guess there's not much to talk about. Well, Simon Pegg dies.
Well, Simon Pegg died. Yeah, they mercy kill him at the end, which is really sad. It was a really sad moment. And I will say, like, Simon Pegg's still awesome. Like, I remember, like, because we really haven't seen much of him since the first season. And then they've kind of brought him back in.
I don't like the writing for his character since the first season.
I didn't like how he kind of like always like was like trying to demean Huey as a means of protecting
him.
I
kind of like the performance.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, I don't like the material they've ever given him on this show because it's been brief to begin. But it's really only substantial kind of in the first half of the first season.
Well, just from a metatextual standpoint, like it's Simon Pegg, and you're used to seeing Simon Pegg be awesome in certain things, and now you see him as like, well, that too. But and now you get to see him as like this goofy ne'er-do-well, you know, just like suburban dad. Essentially,
no, he's pathetic.
Yeah,
he's like a pathetic, like
exactly. You don't want to see that from Simon Pegg. Simon Pegg's awesome. You don't want to see him from that.
I mean, somebody has to play that. I mean, he's good in the role. I just feel like he was wasted by the end of it, both figuratively and literally by the end, because they do waste him off.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I guess people have to die on this show. But but it's not sad in like the earned way. It's sad in the like because we like Simon Pegg and why they have to kill him off.
And it's not even just that. It's the fact that it's like, oh, so the point of this storyline is that like no good deed goes unpunished, because essentially Huey tries to save his dad, do the right thing with the compound V, is not going to do it at the last minute after what Butcher tells him. Then his mom goes, gives him the compound V, and unintentionally causes a fucking massacre in the fucking hospital when Hugh Sr.'s powers activate. And because, you know, as they are clearly not getting around. I was talking about this with Eli last week, how the boys has really been gaslighting us in terms of like there'll be certain elements that they just throw into new episodes out of nowhere and then make it seem like, oh, we set this up in a previous episode. And then I'll be like, really? I don't remember seeing or hearing that in a previous episode.
I need to clear up because I messaged to you before. I don't think you responded to it. But like the whole thing about the savings being faked.
Right.
And always being faked. Were they? Because like in the first season, like they're trying to, Queen Maeve and him are trying to save all those people in the plane, right? And she's like genuinely upset.
Right, that was real. Yeah, that was real.
That they can't like save. So she's obviously saved people, and like Annie has saved people. Like that's been established, like in the first season. Like what? Like so, what do they mean by like all the saves are like fake? I don't understand that.
Yeah, okay, so you take it obviously into account that like, okay, the boys, the like Vought hires actors in order to set up, you know, situations for like younger, for like younger heroes, for like heroes that are like in training, you know, in order to like train them up so that they can be used to the scenarios for when they happen for real. That's what I assume they meant by that. So, but again, are they explaining all of that? No, they're not. No,
we
not
have
at
to
all.
Assume, you have to assume.
Exactly.
You have to have like educated guess, which
Yeah,
you
and it's like,
absolutely can.
yeah, and like I said, the boys, it's just completely gaslighting us as far as the writing goes, expecting us to remember shit that they never set up, right? So
they never even established
Exactly.
like her, like, and the whole thing with Starlight's pregnancy, which you guys were talking about the last episode,
Right,
I think.
right.
Where it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what they never, like she never talked about that with Huey, if I'm not mistaken.
Never.
Yeah, so
I don't remember that. Yeah, that was
that.
never brought up. That was just like, okay, so that's all off-screen thing that they just threw on here. What, to work for Firecracker and her fucking bullshit message? Which
I can't get over.
Hold the phone on now. Hold the phone. We're gonna
that.
save all the last bit when we can fucking rag on Firecracker and Sister Sage and how they really screwed those two characters up.
Firecracker for like definitely is the one I have the biggest issue with. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, no. So basically, so as far as the Hugh and Hugh Senior goes, as far as kind of how they screwed up, what honestly was a pretty sad storyline, right? So the Compound V, right? Hugh Senior's half his brain is dead essentially, right? And that's something that they kind of sort of established, is that the V doesn't heal people, but because it has the ability to give them superpowers and make them invulnerable and such. So we kind of have this half and half situation where Hugh Sr. has superpowers, but then also gets amnesia when he uses his powers unintentionally, and it causes a massacre, and he has like density shifting like Kitty Pryde from the X-Men. And of course, because it's the boys, we have to have this crazy violent scene in what's it called? This crazy uber violent scene where he like unintentionally kills a bunch of people, and then he like rightfully so is going to kill Rosemary DeWitt. I honestly wouldn't have minded if he had, but of course, because it's like, oh, now the boys chooses to be righteous and whatnot. It really was kind of a sad storyline, but like you said, it's not earned at all. And it ends with Huey literally having to mercy kill his dad, and his dad telling him like, yeah, I don't want to end up like, what is it, like this pet rabbit that we had that we ended up like keeping alive until like it just, literally exploded.
It's
so
trying to balance too many storylines.
Yeah.
Like it's just, that's really the main issue.
Yeah.
Like there's too many storylines in these episodes, and they don't really tie them together. It's always like, oh, you'll see the next episode. Oh, it's like everything's a cliffhanger. It's getting annoying.
Yeah, it's turning into The Walking Dead essentially, where it's just turning into cliffhangers of keeping you invested. No, but that's what The Walking Dead. Yeah. That's what The Walking Dead did for years on end, where it would just have these shitty cliffhangers to just keep you going on to the next thing, where they would only have because the problem is that when you only have enough storylines to really take up like a certain amount of time, you end up with, like I said, a lot of padding and a lot of material. And it really is, I've been talking about this with a lot of people, it really is just Anthony Starr's performance as Homelander at this point that is keeping, that is keeping them afloat. Really.
Yeah, it's annoying that he can't get into the Emmy race and supporting.
It's ridiculous, honestly.
He clearly is supporting.
Yes.
Like, he's not the main character of this. It's really an ensemble show, but I guess if you had to pick a protagonist, it's probably Carl Urban, Billy Butcher.
Yeah, but Carl's the lead, for sure.
But, like, this show pretends Anthony Starr's the lead whenever Anthony Starr's on screen, because that's how captivating he is.
Right.
But he's really not used as much as he should for a true lead performance.
Right.
Like, this isn't like a Tony Soprano or a Walter White sort of thing. Like, no, like he's always in the shadows, and then he's there to like make people like piss their pants.
Right.
Or like laser them. Like, it's just every scene as great and as captivating and is one of the best performances on television still as it is. They're giving him really practically nothing to do.
Yeah.
Anymore.
I mean, the whole last episode was basically just a waste. It really was. It was
the last
it
couple.
Was very sad.
Like, really, the whole season for me has been a waste, Dominic. Like,
I'm
five
with
of
you.
these
I'm
episodes
with you.
have been a waste for all of these characters.
I'm with you,
especially
honestly.
him, because he's the most interesting and intriguing and best part of this show.
Yeah,
and he's just pretty much just boiled down to like, oh, he's evil all the time. I mean, they kind of try to give him more of like, are they going to make him a little bit more of a better dad in this episode? But no, like he's just turning Ryan more.
Yeah, and now now you see and that actually brings us to the next point, VaughtCon, which again, not at all obvious takedown of Comic-Con and specifically Marvel.
Yeah,
they're not.
DC.
Yeah, that like that's what the boys has been doing, and it has been part of their
lines
strength.
Are so fucking annoying in this, Dominic. But that, like, the line when I sent you before, like this, the dialogue is like, I can't. condone this anymore. Where they're just like, oh, everyone knows that the reboots are still kind of good, right? Or like that. You could say like the line. I'm not getting it right because I don't want to remember.
I don't remember it. You
But
know
you-
I'm
but-
shit. You know I'm already shitty with remembering when
I know-
quoting lines.
No,
to
you're
begin
not
with.
bad when it comes to this sort of shit. But like, I know with comic book shit. But like, no, but you know what I'm talking about.
I
Like,
do know what you're talking about.
Like
Yeah.
that line. But like, it's so on the nose and annoying. And
Yeah.
like,
And like all this storyline really is just like, you know, again, more conversion of Ryan smacking around PJ Byrne, who is just like the ultimate suck up of all suck ups. And that's
everyone's a suck up. That's the thing.
Yeah,
Everyone that's not that works for Vought, like the Ashley character or him, like all of them are Elizabeth Shue to a certain degree.
Right.
Like all of them at the end of the day aren't superheroes or soups or whatever the term. So they're all always going to cower down to these fucking people.
Right, exactly.
Which is understandable, but it's getting old. It's old.
It is.
It's not getting old. It is old.
It's been spinning its wheels for 5 years now, ultimately. It's like,
Yeah.
we get it. Oh my God. These soups are terrifying. They can kill people. Like,
play another tune. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
But going back to the Sister Sage thing with A-Train, how, like, she definitely
well, let's break that down
knows,
first.
right?
Break that down first. So A-Train obviously talks to Ashley. He admits that, that he's the one that leaked, the files and everything that
You're
they
right.
supposedly caught the person.
But
and
he's doing that to intentionally trap.
He's doing that to
her.
intentionally trap her because he needs her help so they can
Which is
deflect blame
smart.
away from Sister Sage, which is smart, but it still defeats the point. How the fuck has Sister Sage, the self-proclaimed smartest person on this show, not figured out that it's him? Like, what?
But she has.
There's no way she hasn't. And if she,
Like,
and, if
no,
she and if she's not revealing it, there's a reason why she's not revealing it to
She
Homelander.
kind of did though, like not the Homelander, but she kind of revealed it to A-Train.
Right.
Like it's like the way she was talking to
Yeah,
him.
there's
It's
no
like-
way she doesn't know. Which does make me wonder, why do you think she hasn't told Homelander yet? Like, how do you think this is serving her agenda?
And when the news guy is brought in at the end,
Well, we'll
and
get to that.
A-Train
Save that,
looks
save that.
petrified, and she's looking at A-Train like
Exactly.
she knows.
We'll save that. But because my other thought is, I'm like, I have a feeling Sister Sage, one of these two, Sister Sage, Firecracker, both one, if not both, one of those two is not making it through out of this season, you know, because like they didn't bring Soldier
Right.
Boy back after last season, which I
You're
personally
right.
thought was a mistake.
I
but
think it's gonna be Firecracker. I don't think they're gonna kill the black one off.
Well, that's the thing. What I was wondering is, we know at a certain point, like they even said it when Homelander brought her on, is like, okay, she's the only one that's not afraid to she's the only one that's not afraid to tell him like how it is, and but at the end of the day, his ego is ultimately still too fragile, and even though he thinks he wants somebody who's going to be brutally honest with him, he really doesn't. And my thought process is that the season is going to end with her finally going over the line and telling him something he doesn't want to hear, and that's when he snaps and kills her, right?
I think he's gonna do it like halfway through the last season.
The last season, because my thought process, and I think that
they're not going to do it immediately. They're going to let that stretch because they're lazy and annoying.
Right, because my thought process is, I'm like, okay, it's going to tie in with A-Train. I'm like, okay, there's a reason why she has not told Homelander about it, about A-Train, because she clearly knows. So I'm like, okay, so she's clearly serving some agenda. My thought process is that when Homelander finds out that she's serving her own agenda, that's when he's going to kill them both. Because I believe that, if I'm remembering correctly, okay, so I know, so Huey kills A-Train in the comics. I don't know if they're going to do that for the purposes of the show, because they've already deviated heavily from where the comics go.
Well,
so
obviously, they're like that's probably not going to ever happen because they officially
because they've already said that they're not doing a lot of stuff. Like Homelander didn't kill Queen Maeve. They're not going to have Butcher kill off MM, Frenchie, and Kimiko. They already confirmed multiple times that they're not doing the Black Noir being a Homelander clone twist. They're not doing that.
Frenchie shit. Well, yeah, we already know who the new Black Noir is,
right?
But like, are they still pretending that fucking translucent guy is alive?
No, they got that out of the way last season. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
That was at the beginning of last season. Yeah,
I forgot. I'm an idiot. No, but yeah, I miss Queen Maeve kind of.
Me too. Queen Maeve, low-key like power player and underrated part of the show, and her absence is sorely felt. Her and Soldier Boy, man, they really were like the two things that carried last season. They really were. Soldier Boy was the best character last season.
Yeah, definitely the best new character.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know, man. This show is just becoming annoying.
Yeah.
It is it's just annoying, and it's just wants to piss off Republican people.
Yeah.
But in turn, that also pisses me off because I
Yeah,
just
like
want to watch a
intentionally,
show.
like it's intentionally doing it now. Before it
Yeah.
was, but at the very least, like the boys. That's the thing. The boys has never been subtle about
Yeah.
what it's going after. But the difference
Absolutely
is,
not.
but the difference is that. And why this season is so much more egregious is that they are doing it intentionally now. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We all know where it's coming from. We know this is an Amazon production. We know where a majority of their political leanings lie. We know that they're all anti-Trump. We know this. This is not a secret. And that's what makes it so irritating.
I'm getting like Atlanta vibes from
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're like deviating, where they're like saying to the audience that actually loves the show, oh yeah, by the way, we hate you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We hate you, by the way.
Literally.
Keep watching.
Literally, yeah.
Like
So-
that's what I'm getting from this.
Yep. So the end of the VotCon arc, right? So we talked about Homelander and manipulating Ryan and everything. The Deep and that Cameron Coleman guy clashing. The Deep threatening to fuck his wife. Coleman says that he's going to go public with the octopus shit, which I'm like, okay, I can't believe that we're actually devoting time to this.
I want the Deep to die already.
Yeah, how is the Deep still going? Like, why is the Deep still around?
They tried to, like, they were never going to give him like an actual redemption arc.
Right.
They were never going to. Now it just feels like a broken record where it's just like, what is his use besides just being a slave?
And the worst part is that they actually, like, as far as just like constantly clowning him for being pathetic, right? They kind of ran out of that material in season 2, and they at the very least like had some funny bit going by just having Homelander torture him by having him like eat other sea creatures because he knew that would be harmful to him because he could understand what they were saying. But literally, you had Amazon give Eric Kripke, the showrunner, a note being like, can we please stop with the bestiality? And I'm like, but that was all the fun of that character. And now it's like, what? He's just a Homelander slave.
Well, I kind of agree where it's like it gets old after a while. And even if they're not doing the bestiality shit, they're always going to do something sexual with him for some reason.
Right.
Like, even in this episode, it's like, I'm still going to fuck your wife tonight. It's just like, okay, we get it. He fucks. Like, are you going to do anything else with his character? No, kill him then. Because at least you're trying something with A-Train. At least you're trying something. At least Homelander is still inherently interesting.
Yeah.
You know, most of these characters are just becoming annoying. Like, Black Noir has done nothing.
Yeah, the Black Noir, that was a funny bit in like the first episode when it's the joke being that it's the same actor still playing him, but it's a different person.
Old.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm worried that the boys peak with season 3. Also, again, they brought back the 2 Gen V characters, Kate and Sam, and did nothing with them other than, they're there to promote their new Vought special. And then they're like, okay, we're all gonna collectively beat Coleman to death when Homelander's like, okay, we're gonna be gods now. I'm like, is that kind of what you were already doing? Like,
they're even getting lazy with that, where it's just like they cut away so quickly from that death, where it's just like, okay, if you're gonna kill off a hateful asshole character who's like a stand-in for like a Jesse Waters type,
right, or like a Tucker
Carlson, why not show his fucking death then?
Right.
Like,
right, well, that's the you're gonna massacre and show all this blood and guts with all these other regular innocent civilians, but that's the one death you won't show on screen.
Like the poor girl who was murdered by Homelander in The Office a couple episodes ago. Right. Like, that was more graphic than the death we saw. That we didn't.
We
see
literally
in this
had
episode.
fucking people and cows like getting ripped apart by flying sheep in this episode, but you can't show that. Like,
well, we can't show the fucking asshole Fox News guy get killed. No, of course not.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. Isn't that what you want us to see? But no, I guess not. You're so weird.
Yeah. It's annoying.
Alienating us.
Yeah.
Give us a good show.
Yeah. It's annoying. This show's annoying. And especially, and I guess we're getting so angry because we know that the show has the potential to be great. The show would not have lasted as long as it did if it wasn't great, you know? But like I said, it's padding it out. It's filler. It's so stupid bullshit. And ends up with, and also Newman free Stan at the end for like, why? You know? Like
who knows?
Like, I'm just like, remember last season, 2 years ago, we were like going back and forth and being like, wow, the show is awesome. Like, it's completely unpredictable. Where's it going? And now I feel like it's just completely flipped it on its head. It's like, it's unpredictable to an annoying degree. It's like, they're just like, we're just twisting to see if we can like be one step ahead of the audience. And I'm like, but you're not funny or clever anymore. Like, you're just annoying now. You
Yeah,
know?
you're just being obnoxious. Like that.
Yeah.
There's no other way to describe it. This show is obnoxious now,
Yeah.
just because it's so clear what it wants to do now that it's just frustrating. Like, I
Yes.
get it. You don't like Republicans. You don't want the bad orange man in the White House. Make a better show.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. Stop making allusions to real life.
Right.
Stop it.
The other thing too also, and this is a problem that kind of goes back to the comics, is that the problem ultimately is that The Boys has kind of always been rooted in making fun of, I guess, Republicans essentially, because again, the Boys comics were published during the height of the Bush administration. They literally had a sequence that showed the Seven attempting to stop 9/11 and failing miserably. And if anything, unintentionally being the reason for why 9/11 happened, which is like The Boys was on their shit. Like, they were never against that. But I feel like even that was like more, especially because like what was so interesting is that like mocking Republicans at that time was kind of taboo and risque, because Republicans were like, because until the 2008 crash, Republicans were like all the rage in the early 2000s. It was like, well, for the most part, like I said, now it's like
outrage in those years. It just wasn't as
it wasn't as publicized, because
it wasn't as publicized because of social media, like wasn't as present,
right,
at all.
Right.
So that's why it wasn't as like prominent publicly, but like people were definitely upset like that about like and weren't afraid to voice their opinions. Like the Dixie Chicks were definitely like one of the first people to be like, "Oh, fuck Bush," and everyone was like, but like they still like sold millions of records after.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Like I said, it's the effect of social media, and ultimately that's kind of like caused a massive flip. And now it's like to a point where it's like, "Oh, mocking Republicans is so cool," and it's like, no, when it's the
old.
mainstream. It's old.
It's
that's the
old.
problem. Yeah. Mainstream is not cool. It's not. Off the beaten path. Risque. That's what's cool. And so that's
it speaks to a larger issue though, where it's just like if you disagree with anybody on anything, it doesn't even matter what it is, political or not. They'll just be like, "Are you conservative?"
Yeah, literally.
Like what the fuck? Like, no, motherfucker, I'm not. I just disagree with you.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
You think you're gonna win because you think I'm conservative now? Like, well, that's not how arguments work.
Not to mention the fact that everybody tries to turn everything into a moralistic clause, and it's like, oh, if you're on the opposite side, you're like amoral, and it's like, aren't you the amoral one by trying to paint me as a villain for that? You know,
like you're they debauchericize like everybody. Like they make everybody a fucking villainous, like you're a racist automatically.
Right.
You don't even need to say anything racist anymore. It's like if you're conservative, you're automatically
racist. You're automatically what's it called? You're automatically a sexual assaulter. You know, like
and that's why I was upset why they didn't do anything with the Todd character. You guys were saying, what else could they do? I don't know. Give us a little bit more character detail with him as to why he was so infantilized or like infatuated, rather, with the Homelander shit.
Right.
Instead of rushing it to like, oh, he's just used as like a pawn in this whole conspiracy against Starlight. You know? So it's like, yeah, I would have liked a little bit more. And like the ex-wife character doesn't do anything really to explain like why they're married.
Oh yeah, that's in there too, where it's like, oh, the ex-wife is
anything.
mad because their daughter was like getting into a fight with a kid who was making fun of her at school.
And there's no scene of Todd, who was there for the big climactic scene at the end of last season where fucking Homelander publicly murders a guy. So it's like, why can't there be a scene of Todd like talking to the daughter about seeing that? Something interesting, you know?
Yeah.
Not just rush his death because like, oh, he's just a fucking white loser who deserves to die. It's like they're giving nothing to these characters at all.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And with that being said, I don't want to talk about the show anymore. This is just
whoa.
I'm just like,
we haven't even got the Firecracker yet.
Oh, fuck, you're right. Firecracker.
We
haven't even talked about that yet. Oh God.
It's trying to be such an accurate satire. But the least accurate part is like they out her as a pedophile in the last episode, and no one cares.
Yes.
Like what? That's all everyone cares about now is pedophiles. Everyone's like, oh, he's a pedophile. That's a pedophile. Pedophile everywhere on the internet. I'm sorry. That's how my Twitter is. It's like, oh, this person's a pervert. This person's a pervert. That's all you care about now, people are perverts. So now you're trying to make me believe they're just going to wipe that fucking pedophile. She's going to still stay in the 7. Really?
Right.
Give me a break. If you're trying to be this accurate satire that's relevant to the times.
Yeah, accurate satire that's very selective and only seems to be poking fun at the right.
And they're
very
obvious.
accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how satire works.
Right? It's so stupid. It's not even at all. It's just so targeted towards the right redneck wing, sort of like it's bullshit. And they're just setting that character up to eventually get murdered funnily in like the last couple episodes.
In like an insulting way. And I'm not even going to go out of my way to defend that character because that's not exactly a well-written or good character to begin with. But like,
but they don't even try.
For me, the most insulting thing was when they gave her the identity thief fucking backstory. Where it's like, oh, exactly. I was made fun of, and so that justifies me being a piece of shit. Like, it doesn't.
I'm gonna hold this grudge, even though you're apologizing genuinely to me, right? To my face.
Right.
I, you know what I mean? Like, people can change, and these people are always like, okay, can you move on?
Yeah.
But really, the Annie people are the people that don't move on and don't accept apologies. Right. You know what I mean? The Republicans are more like. You know what I mean?
I do, and that's what kind of makes it so. Also, like, it's so contrived, where it's like, oh, we need to give Annie like a new villain. What are we gonna do? Even though because they've realized that Annie kind of has nothing to do anymore.
And more information that we're not even privy to is just like thrown on us. Of just she was a bully actually. She was a piece of shit because remember her mom was a terrible influence on her. Where it's like, I guess that makes sense, but it's not satisfying because you've already like introduced us to this bullshit character who sucks, and I don't care about her goddamn grudge.
Yeah.
I just don't, because you made her such a goddamn cartoon character, saying all these literal Alex Jones quotes in the first episode she shows up. It's like, I'm just waiting for her to die. And Sister Faith is probably going to kill her.
Probably. And she's going to die in a really brutal and awful way. And I don't even know if I'm going to enjoy it when it happens. I feel like, again, like they just wasted this character that could have been interesting, that could have had potential. It's funny because I think back, because again, we do get the two inserts from the Gen V characters here, Sam and Kate. And I really am wondering if, like, when they were making Gen V, they're like, oh, this is like the more relevant, like the more in show, because it's more like, well, it's got a more diverse cast, it's more woke and everything. So I'm wondering if that had a direct influence on this season of The Boys. Because Gen V, I'm sorry, listen, say what you will about Gen V, people who like it, people who don't. Gen V is way better than the shit we're getting this season. Like, objectively, it is a better show than this season.
But the problem I'm having with this season in particular is the attitude. And I feel like it's trying to mimic the attitude that Gen V did successfully for you, but not so for me. But the fact that this season really isn't working for you either kind of speaks volumes.
Yeah, definitely. And look, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on where it ends ultimately, because what I will say is, as much as I loved last season of The Boys, I was not a fan of that finale at all. I actually really think that finale got kind of contrived, and like they really just like push things in a direction so they could kind of keep the show going, especially considering that they had a moment where it's like, okay, they literally had Homelander dead to rights, and then last minute Butcher changes his mind and fucks the whole thing up. I'm like, that is bad writing right there. And
I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But it's still more well written that season as a whole.
Listen, because I love The Boys so much, I'm still hoping that we could get a baller last 3 episodes, especially since I'm pretty sure that all the scenes in the trailers happen in the first 5 episodes. So my hope is that we don't get as much contrived shit. Also, Frenchie turned himself in for all the crimes he committed.
So what is he gonna do? What is he gonna do now?
Whatever.
Like, is he just gonna be in jail for the rest of the
they've been
season?
wasting that character really for a little bit now, and I really didn't know what else there was to do with him. Mother's Milk, okay. Kimiko, okay. Even Newman's head popping gag is getting old.
Kimiko's old to me.
They're all old. They're literally all old.
Mother's Milk doesn't even he doesn't even seem like he cares anymore.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. It's really sad, honestly.
Carl Urban and Anthony Starr are really the only ones.
Yep, they're the only ones that are worth watching the show for.
And Jesse Usher, I still think is
Jesse Usher's good. Jesse T. Usher has been really doing well.
But I don't think the writing has been as strong as it's been in the first couple episodes for his character.
Yep, I agree. So with that being said, Dustin, your final thoughts and star rating for Beware the Jabberwock, my son.
Well, I'll just give a rating for like the first 5 episodes of this season overall. It's all pretty much been equal to me, Dominic, and that's a 2 out of 5. An unenthusiastic 2 out of 5, which really, to put into perspective, the last 2 seasons for me have been like 4.5 out of 5 territory.
I agree. I wouldn't go that high for season 2. I'd give season 2 between a 3.5 and a 4. Season 3, I would definitely give. That's a very strong 4.5 out of 5.
I think the first season was a good introductory season that has some
I still
bumps.
love season 1.
It has some bumps.
It has some bumps for sure.
Tonal issues that I feel like the second season definitely approved upon and like solidified its tone like perfectly. And then season 2 and season 3, like season 3 got better, and this season I haven't seen a show torpedo like this since Atlanta.
Yeah, it's been a minute. It's kind of funny that we were talking about Succession a couple weeks ago, and how Succession, even though Succession, I think, very smartly ended
it didn't
with
torpedo.
No. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. Succession only got 4 seasons when it easily could have been 5. And Succession 4 and 5 would have been so good. Versus this one is stretching it out to 5. And I'm like, I want this shit to end like now.
Exactly.
I don't even want to finish this season. So
that's my problem with it, is that it ultimately feels like it's building up to end this season, but it's not.
Yeah.
Like, you just know that they're just going to keep stretching this shit out way too long, like a piece of string cheese. Like, it's going to break eventually.
Yep. Yes, it is. So, with that being said, Dustin, thank you so much for hopping on last minute. Like, you really, really did me a solid here. Where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me on Letterboxd, Dustin Mason. They can follow me on YouTube, Mr. G Movie Reviews, and they can follow me on Twitter, Duster.
Yes, sir. And you can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talking TV Podcast across all platforms. For everybody that took a break from watching the debate and actually tuned in, thank you so much. It really meant a lot. Subscribe to us if you're watching on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts on Monday, along with our recaps of House of the Dragon and The Bear season 3, which is phenomenal so far. And as always, people, 12 seasons.
It's good. It's good.
We'll see you guys next week.